side, this is going to take about 3 hours or hopefully less. So feel free to have something, cup of tea or coffee by your side so that it keeps you active throughout the session. And of course, if you feel like the language is too technical, feel free to write that also in the comment section so that we can adjust accordingly. So with that small introduction, I would like to welcome Mr. Onyango from the Business Registration Service so that he can give us a brief background of this journey and why we are doing this training, and actually just put to perspective why we are doing what we are doing this morning. Mr. Onyango is the Registrar of Collateral. We are actually doing a training today. Mr. Onyango, karibu. Mr. Onyango, I don't know if you can hear me. Mr. Onyango? I think maybe we have a connection problem with Mr. Onyango. Maybe we can have Dr. NJARAMBA as we wait for Mr. Onyango. Maybe Dr. NJARAMBA, you can say something about the training as we wait for Mr. Onyango.
Mr. Onyango.
Okay, good. Then go ahead.
Rebecca, good morning. This is Mr. Onyango.
Good morning, good morning. Good to have you back. Yes.
I've got a connection problem from this side. I don't know why. But if you are able to hear me, then I will be ready to proceed.
Yeah.
And I would start by... Able to hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Then I'm ready to proceed and start by welcoming each and everyone to this very, very important meeting. I'm very delighted and happy that the Movable Property Security Rights Act is being taken out to the people, and it is going to have traction, hopefully, and this is going to be good for us to have credit in this economy. That has been the intention of the law, and that is why we are here today, to try our level best to sensitize you and to train you in the law so that you are able to know how to apply this law and how this law is going to have an impact on you and how this law is going to be able to expand your businesses and to make credit generally available in this republic. That is the basic intention of this law. So it is absolutely important that we all take it seriously, especially the SMEs and the women and youth enterprises whom we are targeted today, so that we can have credit. Many times we have been complaining in this republic that we need some sort of government to boost us. But that is why the government has taken time, resources, put this law in place, and it's now taking time also to ask you about it. So it's absolutely important that you people get to know the law, to create products in line with this law that is going to make it workable for you. I've been happy to see banner just behind the Proudly Kenyan, Mr. Matthews. I think that's the chairman of the Small and Micro Enterprises Corporation, which is written and indicating that domestic resource mobilization mechanism. This is one mechanism through which you can mobilize those domestic processes we are talking about by simply using your movable assets. These movable assets can be monetized through this law. So it is this law which is going to make you achieve that objective very easily. And this has been made very easy to apply, and easy to use in all respects. So I want to thank our consultants who are all the time working very hard to make sure that you people are trained on this law. So you will make us very, very proud if you can apply the law, if Kenya can be having credit, and if Kenya will be generating that credit from the domestic market. So I appreciate your being here. Please take it very, very, very seriously, and make sure that at the end of it, you can have some kind of relationship with the business registration. Business registration service is the body that is hosting the MPSR, the Movable Property Security Rights Act, especially the e-Collateral Registry. So please feel free to join us. Feel free to take the numbers of our consultants who have been kind enough to be with us beyond their time which was required, and so that we can work together as Kenyans and we can achieve something as Kenyans. You know, this is one way of how we are going to achieve anything as Kenyans, not just because COVID has taught us, but because it has been the intention of the government that we change things, we change our approach, the Kenyan approach. I think that's what I would like to state to the attendees of today. And I want to thank you once again, Mrs. NJARAMBA and company, for hosting this meeting. So I take it back to you, and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Onyango, for that introduction. We lost you at some point, but I think we have all gotten the message. Without wasting much more time, I'd like us to start off the training. And our first training will be done by Dr. NJARAMBA, who is actually the lead consultant in this project. He will give us some kind of insight into what this law is all about. He will be able to give us a background of what was there before we came into this law, and where we are now, where we are heading, what the law actually says, and what opportunities it affords us as borrowers and as micro and small enterprises to help us grow our various businesses. Dr. NJARAMBA is a practicing advocate with more than 20 years of experience in the field. He is a holder of a Doctor of Philosophy degree in law, so he has a world of knowledge that will be useful to us. We hope that we'll be able to gain something from his presentation. He's also a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi School of Law, where he teaches a range of commercial law subjects. And he was actually part of the team that developed this new law that actually brought about the collateral registry, and therefore he's quite conversant with how the system works. So, Dr. NJARAMBA, I don't know if you're ready.
I am ready, thanks.
Dr. NJARAMBA, are you there?
Yes, I am. You can hear me, Rebecca?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
I'm not sure if you can see the
slides are not up yet.
I'm working on that. They'll be up shortly.
Very well. So perhaps the first is to welcome everyone who has joined us today. I know there are still others who are supposed to be joining us, and they will join us as we proceed. And indicate that this training is quite important for small enterprises, for the reason that one of the major challenges that small enterprises, micro enterprises have in this country is the question of capital or access to credit. That is one of the challenges that any startup, any small enterprise will say that if only we had access to finances, if only we had access to credit, then you do better than we are doing. And this regime or this law that we are talking about today is one of the several attempts that have been made to at least assist persons in business and individuals as well to access finance, so that they do not, or they are not inhibited by the lack of finance in what they do in their daily day-to-day activities. And therefore, it is basically just an attempt to say that if we use this law, then at least you have dealt with one hurdle towards our advancement as business people, as individuals. So what I'm going to do in the next 15 to 20 minutes is that I'm going to take us through the system that we had before the MPSR, or what we are going to call the MPSR. And then we are going to see why there was need to change that, or why there, what were the challenges then. And then I'll take us through what we have today. The whole idea about that is so that we can see that since the enactment of the new law, that the environment is better, and if we utilize what we have in the current legal and regulatory environment, then it is possible to achieve more than we would have before the enactment of the law. And therefore, we are basically going to look at what I've said, that we are going to look at what we had before, the challenges, and then we look at what we have today. Now, in the past, we had several laws that allowed the creation of security over the properties that we have, with a view to accessing credit. And one of them, for example, one of the main ones used to be called the Chattels Transfer Act. Now, the Chattels Transfer Act was a law that was used with a view to registering a security of an asset that you have, and then you would be able to access credit from a financial institution. And also, other laws existed. For example, we had the Hire Purchase Act that one would use to acquire, for example, some machinery or some equipment from a company or that deals in hire purchase business. Many other laws existed, and they were all being used together to assist a person to acquire some credit using some asset as security. And therefore, the laws that we have listed there are basically laws that were relevant before the enactment of the new law that we are going to get into in a short while. Now, the question then is, if we had these laws, what was the problem, or why did we need to reform or to review the law so that we can have a new law, the new law that we have today? One of the things that perhaps we may not know is that some of these laws had been enacted many years back, some even prior to independence. And therefore, these were laws that were done or that were enacted when the economy was not what we have today. That is, the economy we had in the 1950s, 1960s is not the same as we have today, because today there are certain things that have happened, have changed, and the way we do business that may not really be good to apply the old laws. Again, you'll also realize that when you have a number of laws dealing with almost the same thing, there is bound to be some confusion. And therefore, we say, when we have a multiplicity of laws, then the confusion brings forth a poor business environment, because you cannot really be sure, because there are several laws that you have to look at. Again, also, because of the era we live in, the systems we are in are even digital, then it was necessary for us to have a system that can give us, or that we can use in a digital economy or in a digital environment. And that is why the old laws couldn't really work well in the Kenyan economy that we have today. And therefore, of course, there was need for a modern credit and legal system that will deal with the economy that we have. Of course, I've mentioned that having many laws basically led to a disorganized legal framework, and therefore it wasn't easy to apply those laws. There were also certain properties that had not been captured in the systems that we had before. That is, for example, things such as what we call intellectual property. I'll get to intellectual property later, whereby we talk about trademarks, patents, we talk about industrial designs, we talk about copyright. You find that they had not really properly been captured in the legal system that we had, and therefore they couldn't be used as something to be given out as security. There was also the problem of the enforcement, and that is the enforcement. If, for example, someone was in default, how do you enforce your rights in respect of a security agreement that you have? And of course, there was also the challenge of having several laws, then meaning that even the registries that we had were many. And therefore, you would need to go to several registries to register for security. Again, also, for example, you'd even need to wait for a time. That is to say, for example, if you are registering what we call a chattel's mortgage, then you'd be told, for example, that you leave the document, then you can come for them after a few days. And therefore, there were those delays, and the delays were not good for business. And therefore, there was need to get out of that so that we can have a system that is not suffering from delays. Again, the question of priority rights, this is important for lenders, so that when you have used one item for loans with several lenders, then the question would be who has a first right. And therefore, the laws had not provided for priority rights properly because there were multiple legal systems. Again, also because of those challenges, then there was a restriction on the freedom of contract. That is because you can't really be sure which works well for you. And therefore, you cannot be really certain as to what you should do when you need to take a security or to take a loan against a certain security. Again, of course, there was the problem of the registration process as to who comes in to guarantee who else, especially where one was borrowing a loan with a view to having someone else guarantee you. There was a problem of the high cost of borrowing. That is, for example, under the old system, the government required you to pay stamp duty when you are borrowing and you are using some asset as security. Of course, as you know, see later, under the new system, stamp duty is not payable when you are using a certain security or a certain asset as security under the new system. Now, what all that led to was reduced amounts of lending, where there were challenges. The challenges were just leading to a situation whereby the lenders were not ready to lend to the potential borrowers, and therefore the amount that were being given out as loans were low, and that had an impact on the persons or the ability of business people to actually access credit with a view to doing business. And that's why we say that led to what we call financial exclusion, that there were people who could not access credit, especially knowing where we have come from, that in this country we have come from a tradition or a history that banks and financial institutions have basically been more interested in someone who has a piece of land to use it as security. But now we are saying that it is possible that even without land, there are many other things which we call movable assets, which you can use to borrow, and banks and other financial institutions are ready to use that so that they can lend money to us. And therefore, the deficiencies or those challenges that we have talked about necessitated the enactment of the new law, and necessitated the need to have a new law. And this is where the Office of the Attorney General and the Treasury and other stakeholders came together to look at how we can have a new legal system that would allow the use of movable assets as security, so that we can have more people accessing credit, and by doing so, we have what we call financial inclusion. That is, as many people as possible get into the formal financial system whereby they can access credit that would enable them to conduct their businesses properly. And that is why we are here today, because that led to the enactment of what we call the Movable Property Security Rights Act of 2017. That is the law that now deals with the creation of security rights over movable assets. And it was enacted in 2017. Together with it, there are some regulations that we call the Movable Property Security Rights Regulations of 2017. And then there is now under it what we call the e-Collateral Registry. That is an e-Collateral Registry that was established under this particular act. So now I want us to go through the act briefly, and this we will do briefly because we may not be able to go into the details of the act. But what I want us to do is to go briefly into the act so that we can understand the basic principles of the act that are important for us, so that we can be able to know how we can use it. Now, the overview of the act that I want us to look at includes why we need the act, and also what is in that particular act. Now, on justification, I would say that this act sought to improve the ease of doing business. That is, because we want our business people, we want Kenyans to access, to do business easily, then we want people to access credit. And we also want people to access credit in a manner that is easy. And that's why this act came in to establish an instant, remote, efficient process of registration of security rights. That is, when you have used an asset as security, then you wanted to have a system that is easy to use for that particular purpose. And then, of course, as in doing so, then we are enabling MSMEs and other and low-income earners and other owners of movable assets to access credit. And of course, again, this act came in to consolidate the registry system, because as we have seen earlier, there were several registries, but then we are saying that because of this, now we have one that we are using for the purpose of registration of security rights over all movable assets. And therefore, basically, the objectives of this are to provide the use of movable property as collateral for credit facilities or for credit purposes. And the Act also establishes the Office of Registrar of Security Rights, and then establishes the registry itself with a view to promoting consistency and certainty in secured financing in this country. And therefore, the whole idea here is to enhance the ability of individuals and entities to access credit using movable assets. Now, this act applies to all movable assets. That is to say that anything and everything that is that we can call a movable asset can be used under this act to access credit. By that meaning that we are only exempting land and buildings, and therefore everything else you can be able to create a security right over it. And the list we have given here is basically just an illustration as to the extent we can go to. so that now it is everything that is outside land and buildings that you are capable of using as security for purposes of accessing a loan. Now, what do we mean by movable assets? Now, movable assets, again, we are talking about everything that is not land or something that or affixed to the land. And we are saying that we have two types of movable assets. We have what we call tangible assets, and we have what we call intangible assets. Now, by tangible assets, of course, we mean those things that you can touch and see. We are talking about those things that, for example, have been used traditionally, such as motor vehicles. You can use a motor vehicle for a loan. We are talking about machinery. We are talking about things such as electronics. But also, we are now talking about things such as crops in the field. We are talking about livestock, the animals you have. We are talking about household goods. We are talking about inventory. That is the inventory you have in a business. That is, for example, if you run a shop, we are talking about the stock that you have can be used as security to access some loan. So we are talking about all those things that you think can be used, that you think are worth something, so that you can be able to use them for purposes of getting a loan. And therefore, we are saying that because of this new act, now it is possible now to use even crops that are in the field. It is possible to use your furniture. It is possible to use livestock to be able to access a loan. Now, on the other hand, we also have what we call intangible assets. And intangible assets, again, are anything you think that is worth something that is not, of course, tangible, something that you cannot see. And we're talking about, for example, someone owes you money and he has given you a document to tell you that he will pay you at some point, and a document to show that he owes you money. So the amount you are owed by that person is an asset that you can be able to use to get a loan. We are talking about invoices and the LPOs that you are using to deliver goods. We are saying that those are things that you can go to your financial institution and get access to credit. We are talking about intellectual property, and by intellectual property, we are saying those things that are worth something, but they are then a creation of your mind. That is, we are talking about patents, we are talking about intellectual property, and we are talking about copyright, we are talking about trademarks, etc. Now, the young people, of course, are also capable of using all these things, and that's why we say that even things such as mobile phones, laptops, etc., other electronic gadgets can still be used for purposes of accessing credit. Now, when we talk about something like intellectual property, we are saying that this is something that previously the law had not acknowledged it as something that can be used as security for a loan. And I want to illustrate what intellectual property is. Now, if, for example, someone is a musician and he wants to produce a song, but then he does not have money to produce that song, then but then he has it, then he can be able to use that, and we call that copyright. He can be able to use that, go to a financial institution, and he will be able to the financial institution, you'll be able to assess that and value that. And under this particular act, it will be able, or it will be possible to create a security right over that. Or even someone who is good at ICT, someone who makes apps or software, someone who does such things can be able now to use that, and it will be registered under this act as the basis upon which a loan has been granted. You find people doing paintings, etc. And therefore, all these are things that can be used today that were not, you were not able to use them before, because the law had not really recognized them as things that can be used as security for a loan. So all these can now be used. Now, then the question is, how do we create a security right? Now, we say that a security right is created by a security agreement. By that, we mean this, that here is a financial institution and here is a potential borrower. And they have agreed that we are lending you money against this particular asset. Then what happens after that is this, that they enter into an agreement that will say that this is the amount we are lending you and this is the security that will be used. And we say that a security agreement is usually made between a guarantor and the secured creditor. Now, I want to emphasize here what we mean by a guarantor and what we mean by the secured creditor. Now, a secured creditor, of course, is a person who is lending and he wants some security, or he wants that asset as security. Now, the guarantor is the person who owns the security. That is a person who owns a particular asset that will be used as security. And here we are saying that it is possible that the guarantor may be the borrower or may not be the borrower. Now, in a situation whereby you are going to borrow some money and you own some asset, then you will be both the guarantor and the borrower. But then in certain instances, you may want to borrow some money, but you do not have an asset. And therefore, you may be able to use someone else's asset as security for the loan. So that other person will be the guarantor, you'll be the borrower. Now, a security agreement is basically between the owner of the asset, the guarantor, and the secured creditor, to show, of course, because we want to the person who has the right over the asset. And it's basically to say that this asset is being used to lend so much money, so that if the money is not paid, of course, the asset will be realized for purposes of recovery of the money. So the security agreement is the one that creates a security right. Now, however, after the security right is created, then we say the next, and which is, we may say, the most important step is what we call the registration of an initial notice. Now, the registration of an initial notice is where now you get in contact with the registry that we are talking about. Now, the registry we are talking about, or the e-Collateral registry, is the one that now we say that you register an initial notice in. Now, an initial notice is the notice that you file on the system to indicate that you have given this particular person some loan, and then this is a security that is has been used for it. And the initial notice is filed by the secured creditor. So it isn't the borrower who files it. It is the creditor who files the initial notice. And the initial notice must contain certain contents. And of course, most important is the content, the details of the guarantor. The guarantor, again, we have said, is the owner of the asset. Again, also, we need to have the details of the secured creditor. And then we need to describe the collateral. That is a particular asset that has been used. Again, you also need to show for how long this loan will be payable, and therefore how long the particular asset has been used and security, and any other information that is used is required on the system. Now, remember that, and as you see later, the initial notice is registered on the system, and therefore it's basically a situation whereby you go into the system and certain information which you have indicated here is required of you, and it is basically you just enter that particular system information on the system. Now, of course, once you enter that system, then the registrar will put the system on the record, and therefore the system automatically records what you have put in or what has been keyed in. And then the person registering gets a copy of the information, actually a printable copy of the information that has been entered onto the system. Now, this initial notice that we are talking about, again, is the most important document here, because it is the one that tells everybody out there that a certain asset owned by so-and-so has been used as security for purposes of a loan. And therefore, once it is registered there, then the secured creditor is supposed to send the information in the notice to the guarantor, to the owner of the asset, within 10 days. Now, the purpose is to ensure that the person who owns the security gets a copy of what has been registered. That is, he needs to see that whatever they had agreed on is what has been done. Now, again, also, this particular notice cannot exceed a period of 10 years. That is to say that in the first instance, when a notice or when an initial notice is registered, then we say that the loan is payable within 10 years. Of course, there are those that will be for a lesser period, and therefore it is not all of them that must be for a 10-year period. Again, also, you need to ensure that the information of the guarantor is correct, or whatever has been put there is correct, and also the details of the collateral. Otherwise, the notice will not be effective. Remember, again, that we have said that this notice is filed by the secured creditor. And therefore, from your end as a borrower, is just to ensure that whatever you get or the information you receive as having been registered is the correct information that you had that is supposed to be on the system. Now, secondly, we have what we call an amendment notice. An amendment notice is that notice that is registered with a view to bringing or to having to correct information that has been put in the initial notice. And that's why we say that, for example, because at the point that the initial notice is filed, we require authorization of the guarantor. If there was no authorization, or if the authorization was not properly done, then that's when you amend and then indicate what was authorized or what was properly authorized. Or you may need to amend to define some collateral. That is, perhaps there is some asset that you want to remove or to add on the system. Again, also there may be a change in the details of the guarantor, and therefore the amendment notice basically comes in to amend or to revise what was the initial notice. Again, it is done by the secured creditor. So it is a secured creditor who files the amendment notice. Lastly, we have the cancellation notice. And the cancellation notice is that notice that comes in a manner to bring to an end this relationship. And we say that, for example, it is registered on termination of a security right. That is, for example, if the loan has been paid and therefore you want to discharge the asset, then that is when you file a cancellation notice. So it is basically in a manner to discharge the asset at the end of the payment of the loan. Of course, there are those other instances whereby you may need to file a cancellation notice. For example, where the initial notice was not authorized by the guarantor, and therefore it ought not to have been registered, or if there was withdrawal of the authorization by the guarantor, or if the security right to which the notice relates has been extinguished. Now, by that meaning this, that if you are going to borrow some money from a financial institution, and as we are saying, it is a secured creditor who files it, then it is on your responsibility to be sure that once you receive a copy of the notice, that you confirm that whatever you had agreed on is what has been put on the system, because it may bite you if you do not check and confirm whether it is correct or not. And why I say this is because the office of the registrar is not bound to check what has been put on the system. It is upon the parties to check that whatever that has been put on the system is correct. And therefore, the registrar will not, for example, come and tell you that you need to amend this or the other, because that is not part of the responsibility of the registrar. So the registrar's duty is to just put there for public information whatever the parties have put on the system. And therefore, the registrar on his own motion will not amend anything, will not delete information, of course, until the period of effectiveness has expired. Now, the next thing that is important, and this again I mentioned earlier, is quite important for the lenders or the secured creditors, is a question of priorities. Now, by priority, again, we mean this. Where a security, where an asset has been used to acquire a loan from several creditors, there is always a question as to who has the first right over the asset in the event of default. And we say that under the Act, this has been settled, because it has been settled that whoever registers first the initial notice is the one who has priority. That is to say that the person who registers the initial notice first gets priority over any other person. It doesn't matter whether, for example, there is someone else who had used or who had taken it as security, as long as he didn't register. So the person who registers the initial notice first has priority over all the other persons. And therefore, it is important for creditors that when they are using a certain security for a loan, that they actually conduct a search to be sure that there is no other person who has used it for security, and therefore that person would have the first right over them. So it is really important to conduct a search. And because it is not an issue of whether someone else had taken it as security or not, that will not be used. What will be used is who registers first. And the system we have is one that indicates the date and time of filing of the initial notice. And therefore, there will be no doubt as to which came in first. Now, then the question arises, if you have borrowed some money against some asset, and then you default, you can't pay, how will the creditor enforce that? And we say that the law provides for a clear position. And of course, the creditor can go to court. But again, also the creditor can exercise his rights under the security agreement. That is, whatever the security agreement has said that he can do, he will be able to do it to recover his money. And now what he may do, or what the creditor may do is, as we have said, he can file a case, that is, sue the debtor for the purpose of recovering his money. Or if the debtor is a company which has created what we call a floating charge, he can be able to appoint a receiver. A creditor can be able to lease the movable asset with a view to recovery from the rent that will accrue. The creditor can be able to take possession of the movable asset. He can be able to sell the movable asset itself. And therefore, these are the many ways in which the enforcement under this act can be done. So remember, we are saying that the act provides for this, and also the security agreement that the parties have will provide as to how one can enforce on matters of or where there is default. Now, what we are saying is this: that this particular act has provided for a mechanism in which we can be able to access credit and lenders to actually use to give out money against some assets. And that is where we say that it is making it easier and possible, remembering that we are talking about an online system. We are talking about a registry that you can access from anywhere. We are talking about a registry that as long as you have internet access, then you can be able to register, and it doesn't take time. We are talking about a registry whereby you register instantly, and a security right is created instantly. Of course, to facilitate that, there are regulations that are made under the Act that make it possible for the registrar of movable properties to register or to operate the system or the registry. And therefore, what we are saying here is that it is possible now to register security rights of our assets in a manner that is instant, in a manner that we can be able to, again, conduct a search offer. And this, I'm saying that it is facilitated by the Act, and of course by the regulations that have been made there under. So now, Rebecca, back to you. I want to stop there for the moment.
Thank you, Dr. NJARAMBA, for that presentation. I don't know if we have any questions from the participants. Anybody with a question for Dr. NJARAMBA?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me? My name is Soita.
Yes, Mr. Soita, we can hear you.
I'm a trainer at the Technical University of Kenya.
Yes.
Also a member of MSEF. Now, what I'm asking Dr. is about he has talked so much about the Movable Property Act, the act which was enacted in 2017, plus the regulations for movable property. He has also explained much about the movable property themselves, but before this, we used to have the immovable properties. I'm talking from the business perspective.
Yes.
Movable properties, which used to call as real properties. These ones are now movable properties. And then he has gone ahead by saying that movable properties can be classified into two. Here we have what you call the tangible properties or assets, and then the intangible properties or assets. Now, I have about 2 or 3 questions related to that.
Okay.
The first one, I have not understood clearly the ecosystem that these new acts, after being in place, you see, we expect several institutions to operate under these acts and regulations. Now, we expect to have institutions like financial institutions like banks, and one of the banks is like the World Bank, for instance, which is expected to lend to some private or some institutions, plus the commercial banks. And here we have also the business registration services. I've seen they are being represented here. And we know business registration services have been registering companies or businesses when they register to become businesses. Now, what is also their role in this ecosystem? And then another thing is about the credit guarantee scheme. You see, when we have been borrowing money, if the loan you borrow is unsecured, I think the government came up with something called the credit guarantee scheme. So with this act now in operation, are we going to have any credit guarantee scheme for that matter? Then lastly, we have been having things like asset financing or LPO financing. And we have been having something called factoring. You see, me, I'm more of a business person, factoring. So these things have been done before in the earlier systems. And here you are coming up with this act, which to me, it looks like now we are just continuing some of those things we have been doing in the older system, although it looks like it's a great system. Lastly, about the e-Registry, who is going to run the e-Registry? I think I'm done.
Okay.
Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you, Peter, for your questions. Now, a number of them will address them or the issues in the next presentation in a few minutes. But perhaps what I can say at the moment is this. The system that we have today is one whereby there are certain things that business was doing before, but the law had not caught up with the advancements in business. And I'm talking about things such as asset financing, LPO financing, factoring, etc. For that, I'm saying that it was there, or things such as those ones were happening, but it didn't have the legal backing. That is, you didn't have, for example, the registry in which you could register them. And therefore, what this law is doing is to provide now a legal system for it, so that it can bring certainty, it can bring confidence in the system, that now you can even be able to search and see who has done this and who has used what particular asset. And therefore, it is going to bring, or it is bringing confidence into the system, because now there is a legal framework that we didn't have before. Now, as again you see in the next presentation that we have, this you have said, for example, that BRS, ask what is the role of BRS. You see that BRS is basically the owner of this system, and therefore this system is housed at BRS, and you see that that shortly. And indeed, this project is a World Bank project, and therefore all that is basically taken care of. Now, financial institutions have been using this system for the last 2 years, and therefore it isn't really something that we can say that they are out of it. So financial institutions have now basically used this a lot for more than 2 years now. And therefore, it is really working well. And therefore, movable assets had no centralized registry. There were many registries at one you could go to for purposes of movable assets. And we distinguish movable assets from immovable. And by immovable, we are basically talking about land and buildings. And therefore, here we are saying that everything else other than land and buildings is covered under this particular system. And this system, there is no option in using this system as long as the lending relates to movable property. That is to say, if someone, for example, decides to lend some money against a movable asset, and he doesn't register under this system in the e-collateral registry, then he will not be able to enforce his rights. And therefore, it's not really something that we can say that some may use it, some may not use it. As long as someone is using some movable asset as security, then if ever you want to enforce your right against the borrower, then this is the only system that can be used. And that's why we see, for example, that this law repealed or removed what we had before, like the Chattels Transfer Act. Right, that the Chattels Transfer Act is no longer law in Kenya because of this law. And therefore, this is basically the law that we have today. And the question you have asked about the credit guarantee scheme. Now, the government is still, of course, in the process of establishing that particular scheme. And what we may say is that once it becomes operational, then that is when we can see how well it will weave into what we have today. But until then, we may not say with certainty that this is how it will work together with this particular system. So I think that answers the question. So that's okay.
Yes, that's fine. That's all.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a question, but first of all, I'd like to commend the business registration for holding this workshop and the training for the micro and small businesses. My name is Matthew Ashers, the National Chairman of the Micro and Small Enterprises Federation. I'd also like to commend my members, whom I'm seeing seated in a building in WANYAGA, and to just urge them to pay very keen attention to the training that is going on, because it is for the benefit of the grassroots micro and small enterprises. Now, to the question, we have actually had a number of laws that, as new laws are enacted, particularly after the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was enacted, have actually conflicted so much with the traditional laws. They have actually called for a bit of harmonization between and among all these laws. And then the way the law has been practiced, for example, formally, in business registration, you find that in your registry, you actually find one business has been registered, several, many, first come, first served. So that if, let's say, your business was registered earlier, one that was registered later has to change their name to something else. They have to reconsider what they registered. Now, the question on this is that how is this going to affect the movable properties? In terms of, I may come and register movable property, yet the same property has been registered under as a business name somewhere. Okay, it might be an intellectual property in terms of a name. I can get a loan on the basis of it, and yet it has been registered as an IP, as a trademark somewhere. So I'd like a clarification for the benefit of the MSEs. how this harmonization is to be brought about. Thank you.
Now, Matthews, let me see how whether I've understood the issue. Now, the business registration service is now entirely in charge of company's registration. It is in charge of business name registration. It is in charge of this registry of collaterals. It is in charge of, basically bringing together matters business. And therefore, of course, you can be sure that whatever is at the business registration service is under one roof, and therefore there is harmonization. But then, of course, we still have other institutions outside business registration service. Like now, you have mentioned things such as trademarks, which are still at the Kenya Industrial Property Institute. And therefore, the registration regime for them is still a separate registration regime. However, even if it is separate, there is a question as to, of course, harmony within government institutions or how they work. And therefore, we may say that with the creation or the establishment of the business registration service, we have seen a change or an improvement in how business is done, and even registration of businesses, because especially because of even of digitization, that we can be able to even conduct searches very fast in a manner that you do not really waste time on registration of, let's say, a name that you wanted to register, and then perhaps in between it has been taken by someone else. And therefore, the speed in which digitization makes things work, then we can be able to say that that has solved some of the problem. Now, of course, eventually, on matters such as linking between company names or business names and trademarks, etc., and that will still be brought about by much more harmonization between BRS and KIPI. But I think so far, so good. Rebecca?
Dr. Jaramba?
Yes, yes.
Shigadi wants to add something.
Yes, Shigadi.
I think what he's referring to is the issue of double registration, whereby as we said, automation has brought out to light so many things. And so we've noticed that in the company registry, some companies have the same name. So hence the reason why the criteria we use is the company that was registered first, then we'll have the right to use that particular name. And so the second company that was registered later, we are requesting them to change name. So don't take it negatively. It's quite a positive thing because it will ensure that our registry is credible to the best. That's all I have to say. I hope we've answered your question regarding why we are requesting you to change the name. Rebecca, that's it.
Thank you, Shigadi. I hope that is settled. Matthew? Okay, so I hope that one is settled. I don't know if it's clear now. Matthew, I believe that is proudly Kenyan.
Yes,
so,
it's clear.
Okay, if there are no more questions, maybe we can quickly move to the next session. Anybody else with a question? Dr. NJARAMBA, maybe you can take us through the next session about the institutions involved. If you're
yes,
ready.
very well, Rebecca. Now, very briefly again, I want us to take about 10 minutes on the institutional framework and the responsibility matrix. By this, just meaning what are the institutions are involved in this movable property security rights regime, and who does what. So that is what I want us to get into very briefly. And as an introduction, we have the BRS itself, we have the Registrar of Collaterals, and we have the e-collateral registry, we have the companies, the readers, the borrowers, and the guarantors. So those are the ones we are going to look at to see who is there to do what. Now, starting with the Business Registration Service. Now, the BRS is a body under the Attorney General's office. It is semi-autonomous, meaning that it has a board of its own, and of course, it has a staff of its own. And as we have just mentioned, it oversees many other things, including companies, insolvency, and so on. So it is the house. It is the one that really houses the movable property security rights registry. And therefore, it carries out all registration or whatever it has been empowered to do under the BRS Act. And of course, maintaining the data and the record. It is, of course, in charge of the policies and the guidelines that need to be made from time to time, and recommend policy formulation and amendments to the law. So it is a body that basically is there with a view to carrying out the government mandate on matters business registration, and of course assisting and advising or recommending to the government what changes or improvements need to be made. And of course, in doing so, it collaborates with other state agencies. Now, so this is basically the body that houses this collateral registry that we are talking about. Now, under it, we have the Registrar of Collaterals. Now, the Registrar of Collaterals, or the Registrar of MPSR, is basically the office that now deals with the movable property security rights. As again, remember, we have seen that the BRS has many things that it deals with, and therefore the office of the registrar is basically in charge of the e-collateral registry. And this meaning that it is the office that receives, stores, and makes accessible the notices that are registered. And as we have said, it does not amend or revise or change anything. So for the registrar of collaterals, is basically to receive and make accessible whatever information that is there. And for that reason, it cannot be held, or that office cannot be held liable for something that is in the notices, because whatever is in the notices has been entered there by the parties themselves. Then we have the registry itself. We call it the e-collateral registry. And the e-collateral registry is basically an online platform. And we say it is an online platform because it is hosted on e-Citizen, on the e-Citizen platform. And therefore, those who have engaged with the e-Citizen platform, then you'll appreciate how it works. And it is, as we have said, administered by BRS. And it is one system. Again, it's a registry of its kind in this country, because all you need basically is to access internet, and then you have a remote registration of security rights. And therefore, the security rights that are being registered here are those that you have agreed on with the other party, and therefore they are the ones represented under the security agreement that you have. And once you put in your details there, you submit them there, then you get an instant time-stamped registration of the rights. And therefore, it is an instant system that allows for remote registration of security rights. This registry is accessible by readers and also members of the public. Now, the members of the public will access by way of conducting a search. And therefore, they will do a search and they'll get the information that is there. And it allows for searches, basically searches. And we say that searches can be conducted either by checking on the particular asset where it has a serial number or a number that is searchable, or by searching through the name of the particular guarantor or his ID number. Again, also it allows for the registration of the initial notice, the amendment notice, and the cancellation notice. So this is the registry that basically runs this whole system. And this registry works on very simple forms. Of course, when you are registering, you may not see them as forms because you are basically just asked the information that is required, and then you just key in or input the information that is required. And then once you put it there, again, we are still emphasizing that it is for you to ensure that the information that you key in is the correct information, because the registrar will not change or even ask you to change anything. So basically, the duty to verify and certify the validity of information is basically on the secured creditor. And then, of course, the grantor has to check once he receives the notice or the copy of the notice to check that whatever he has been given is the actual possession or the whatever they had agreed on. Now, still at the BRS, we have the companies registry. And this is the one that stores information in respect to companies. And therefore, even where, for example, companies are registering assets, registering the movable property security rights, you find that if they are creating what we call debentures over their assets, then the same goes to the company's registry. Therefore, the company's registry is important here when we are dealing with registering the debentures in respect of companies. Again, we have the RED, or the secured creditor. And this is the institution that is lending money. Now, remember, when we talk about the secured creditor or lender in respect of this particular law, we are not just talking about those big licensed financial institutions. Any person can become a lender or a secured creditor under this act. That is, if you give a friendly loan to someone, and then you want to take a security, you can still register this as a secured creditor. And therefore, it is not just for those licensed institutions. Any person can register a notice as a creditor for purposes of this particular act. And therefore, the lender has a role, of course, of taking care of the asset in the event that he is the one who has taken possession, then register the initial notice, register any amendment or cancellation notice, and where the asset is in the possession of the grantor, then, of course, you have the right to inspect it as a secured creditor. Now, of course, once a secured creditor registers the notice, he has to give it a copy of it to the grantor within the prescribed time, and of course take all enforcement actions diligently. That is where he has to do something. Then there is the expectation that he will do it diligently and in good faith. Now, the grantor's responsibility, we say the grantor is that person who owns the particular asset. And of course, one of the things he has to do, one of the responsibilities, is to authorize the registration of the notice, so that now he can confirm that he has accepted that it be used for purposes of creation of a security right. Of course, he is supposed to also notify the creditor if there are any changes in respect of his details, his identifier details, or the issue of the collateral, or if the collateral is to be transferred. And where he is in possession of the collateral, he is supposed to exercise reasonable care to preserve the asset. Now, lastly, we have the borrower. Remember, we said that the borrower may be the grantor or may be a separate person. And here we are basically saying that he should pay his loan, whether he is a grantor or he is not. So he should pay his loan. And also, where he is the one in possession of the asset, he is expected to use the asset properly and preserve it and take good care of it. So what we are just saying here is this, that for this system to work, all these persons or institutions are supposed to work together. The idea being that if they all work together, then the system will work well. And therefore, of course, it will lead to a situation whereby accessing credit in Kenya will be so easy, because everybody is playing his role and taking his responsibilities seriously. So those are the institutions and individuals involved, and those are their responsibilities. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Dr. NJARAMBA, for that detailed presentation of the involved institutions. I don't know if someone has a question regarding that. as we wait to...
Yes, Dr. Again, this is Mr. Soita. You have explained now the ecosystem very well, or how the institutions relate as their responsibility, what you call them, responsibility matrix. But I still don't have a clear understanding of how banks or financial institutions now come in. Because me, I know if I have a vehicle, for instance, I take my logbook to the bank. And this bank, once it takes the logbook, it gives me a loan after they send their own officers to come and evaluate that I have that asset. I believe that is what has been happening. So what happens at the back office of the bank, I really don't understand whether they also have a link with the Attorney General's business registration services. You see, that connection is not well explained. Dr. please elaborate on this.
Yes, Mr. Soita. You know, what happens is here. When you go to a financial institution to borrow money, and you are using that asset, so we have said it is on the creditor to register the security rights, meaning that they are the ones at their back office who now get to key in the information of the system. And this system is accessible to everybody. And that's why we are saying financial institutions have been using it for over 2 years now. That is, any person today in the last 2 years or so who has used an asset to get a loan from a financial institution, this is the system that they have used, and therefore they all have access, so that now they are using the system continuously, so that and again it is accessible to everybody. So that now there is no, for example, special link that is required, for example, on the systems to be linked to each other for them to be able to access it. If they go to the system, they register there and they register the particular asset. So they have been using it for a long time, and even in respect of registration of logbooks and many other assets, including livestock, including machinery, including crops in the field, including household goods and so on. And therefore, it is registered. It is registered by the creditors. So I don't know whether I've answered you, Mr. Soita.
Yes, thank you. But although I will do further research on that. Okay.
Dr. Jaramba?
Yes, Chigadi?
Maybe just to top up, I think the banks also come in to ensure that they secure their rights. So in as much as, yes, they take your logbook, if they don't register it under our registry, and then someone else, you use the same logbook, goes to you use the same logbook to secure credit, and that second person registers it before that particular bank, then when it comes to in case of a default, then the second bank that registered it first will have a priority over it. Is that clear?
Thank you, Shigadi, for that. I hope, Mr. Soita, you've been assisted. Basically, the registration is just for purposes of the banks to secure their interest, so that as a borrower, you do not, for example, use an asset that they have used to lend you money by somebody else, and then they have no way of recovery in the event that you are unable to pay the loan. Anybody else with a question before we move on?
Yes. Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
That one of the functions of the business registration services is to implement relevant policies and guidelines, and to essentially advise the AG and providing with the necessary information to guide policy formulation and amendment. Now, one of the problems that we have in the MSE sector is that, again, we go back to the duplication of roles, the duplication of institutions that are involved in dealing with us. The MSE Act 2012 provides for the registrar of micro and small enterprises. And we actually found to be a conflict between the MSE Act and the Business Registration Services Act of 2015. So that we'd actually like to ask how this harmonization can be done so that the registrar of the MSEs under the MSE Act can actually be changed into an accreditor of MSE, so that his role remains to accredit MSEs that are already registered under the Business Registration Services Act. Because out of that, we'll registrations again. But then if we cannot be properly accredited, some people will actually be doing double registration under the Business Registration Services Act and then under the MSE Act also. So accreditation is very important, but the AG's office actually has to help the micro and small enterprises to strengthen out the security around even recognition under the two acts. Thank you.
Thank you. Shigadi, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
I think we are in communication with them. It should not be an issue in the near future. We are in communication. It has brought so many things, but we are in communication with them. So I assure you that will be sorted out.
Thank you, Shigadi. I hope that helps, Matthew. The problem will be sorted out in the near future.
We appreciate it.
Now,
thank you very much.
Okay. I think we can now move on to the next session, but before we do that, I'd like to recognize two groups that are attending together. There is a group attending under DM Jenga. This, I believe, is the MSEF group from Kiambu. We are really happy that you, actually, this is very commendable that you took this initiative to put your members together so that they can all benefit from this session. We appreciate the effort and we hope that they are all able to follow us through. This is really, we acknowledge the effort. I can see there's also another group from attending Andanjati. There's a number of people that are participating together. We appreciate that you to set up a group of people to attend together and benefit from this. This is really commendable once again, and we are happy that you are here with us. So with that, I think we can move on to the next session. I will take you to the next part
I want to ask
part of the presentation. And before I do that, I like to request that. Say something? Yes, Philip. Yes, Philip, please.
Okay, sorry. There is a concern that maybe one of us has raised, and I thought this is the right time to do it. Actually, the services, the business registration of SME services, is done from the Attorney General's office. And if you can see, imagine we have got SMEs across the country. And I cannot imagine if somebody from all the way, for example, from Turkana, all the way from Wajir, Mandera, and other places, moving all the way to come and register. Because some part, I think from the Attorney General's office, there is only the partially register those businesses. But if you look at the associations, they are doing it manually. People keep on transferring documents to Nairobi for purpose of registration. And I was asking, is there a way the Attorney General's office can be able to move their services down to the ground so that these SMEs can find it easier to operate from there? Because actually, if you look at the people who are techno-savvy, maybe some of us, we can be able to come online, attend a meeting. But if you look at the ordinary SMEs, they rely on maybe visiting the offices because actually they are not well endowed with the technology. So, but you find the Attorney General's office is only in Nairobi. And I don't know whether there's somebody representing that office so that he can be able to tell us that what are the plans they have in the future so that they can be able to roll down some of these services so that it can be enjoyed across the country. I can't imagine a small-scale trader getting public service to dash to Nairobi to fix something that it can be done from his hometown or somewhere else. I am very happy that some of the services have been electronically been put online, but they have not fully implemented the online registration because there's some of the parts are not there. So people must actually physically carry their document and run all the way to Nairobi to do it. So that's the concern I wanted them to address. And maybe they consider having regional developed units that the SMEs can be able to visit and maybe get attended to. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. We have representative from the office. I don't know if Shigadi or Mr. Onyango. Shigadi, I can see you are here. Want to say something?
Oh, before that, may I contribute?
Hello.
Yes, Shigadi. Somebody wants to say something. Please hold on. I think an addition to that. Yes, Matthew, please proceed.
Yes,
Shigadi.
It is on the point of Philip Moeb that just so that it can be answered together, that accreditation of MSEs should actually, by the MSE authority, should actually be accreditation of MSE associations, not of the MSEs proper, because they all operate under accreditation. So that on Philip Moeb's point, this can help the associations to better reach to the grassroots. For example, when you consider Huduma centers, the Huduma centers are at the county level, but all the way to the village, we find that there's a gap that associations actually need to come in and fill, particularly under Article 36 of the Constitution, that we have the freedom to actually join, form, and participate in activities of associations which actually involve and encompass helping the government to reach where the government cannot reach. So as the MSE sector, we actually have, and as a federation, we actually have our job cut out for us, not only to reach to the village, but also to help the government to ride on our backs, the last person in the village. And that is why we have such trainings. So that I would say that the Business Registration Services Board, in talking to the MSE authority and the Ministry of Industrialization, actually needs to look at how to harmonize the acts to move away from the MSEs, which are the reserve of the BRS, and come to the MSE associations, which are at a higher rank, to enable the MSE Federation and attendant bodies to take it over and help the government to reach the last village. Thank you.
Thank you. Shigadi, now you can go.
So I missed that bit, so I don't know what he talked about, but I wanted to respond to about registration of business. I don't know which service you're referring to, if you could clarify, but almost all our services are online, particularly when it comes to registration. We do not accept manual applications at all. So unless you're clear which application you're talking about, then for us, we don't take manual applications.
Philip, you want to clarify?
Yeah. For me, I hope I'm clear on the other side. I mean the registration of associations, especially the Juakari associations. The registration of associations is not online yet. So what is online is registration. Hello? Registration of association is not online yet. Yes.
Also, we as business registration service, we don't register associations. So that I think is under the society, so the registrar general.
Okay.
But
Rebecca,
I'd like to confirm that it is work in progress. They have started with the same department that has marriages. So they've started with marriages, and so societies will soon be up and running online.
Okay, maybe now before we move to something else, I'm asking now, where do the SMEs register? Where do they register? Because that's the confusion that we have been having for some time now.
Perhaps I make a clarification here, Philip.
Yes.
The BRS registers companies, it registers business names and such. So what that means is that if, for example, what you are calling an SME is a company you want to register, which is for purposes of operation, you still register it as a company at BRS. So if it is a business name you want to register, you still register it at BRS as a business name. And therefore, the BRS registers that. Now, if you want to register an association of business people, then those ones are registered by the Registrar of Societies and the Registrar General. But those are associations or societies, not basically SMEs themselves. They are not small businesses. They are basically associations of such people. Now, when now you want to register with the Micro and Small Enterprises Authority, you are going there now to register whatever you already have as a business, but for purposes of benefiting from whatever preferences may happen as a result of being a small or micro enterprise, then that is when you are going to MSEF for registration. But the actual registration for you to have a company or a business name, you register at the BRS, and which is online.
Okay. Maybe what is the difference? I think maybe I'm asking even for many who are here. What's the difference between registering a name, business name, and registering a company? What is the difference? If I register the business name, is it enough for me to start operating as an SME? Or must I register as a company? What's the difference? That's what we want also to be clear.
Yes, registration of a business name can enable you to start operating. Now, the distinction between a business name and a company is this, that when you register a company, there is something we call the entity. And you register a company, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 people, and you are registering it to say that it is an independent body separate from the persons who are running it or who are owning it, and therefore you become directors or shareholders. But when you register a business name, it's basically you trading as such, or you are trading in the name of that business. And therefore, either of them, you can run a business or you can operate a business in that particular manner. You can operate a business whether you have registered a business name or a company. The only thing is that in one, it is you trading as such. In the other one, we say it is a separate entity. But Philip, not all, even for the others where we need perhaps more clarification on business names and companies, I think we can get in touch even after this, and then we can organize something. I think for that particular purpose on the registration mode of businesses, so that we can be able to look at the differences between the various types of businesses that one can open, and what are the merits or advantages and demerits of each one of them, and indeed what you need so that you can be able to register one and start operations. I think we can be able to organize that on the sidelines, of course, if there is need for that.
Madam Shigadi, allow me to say something.
Yes, Mr. Onyango, go ahead.
I wanted to stress to the gentleman that this registry we are talking about is an online registry. It has got no boundary and it has got no limitation. So he can register as an individual, he can register as an MSE. So he can register as an individual, he can register as an MSE. Come again? Come again? Hello? Are you able to hear me, Shigadi?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Onyango.
Yes, I was stressing to the gentleman, this is an online registry which is available to everybody and available everywhere, not only in Turkana, but it's available even beyond Turkana. It's available everywhere. As long as they can make a security agreement between themselves and the other person who is lending, that will be fine. As to registration of associations, it has been stated to him, or for that matter, SMEs, there is the SME authority which can register them. SME authority is there for that purpose. Registration of societies, he can come to the Attorney General's office and register a society as such. But a society is not a business. Here we are talking about business registration services. So it is business registration services encompassing all businesses, but not societies, which are welfares, which he was talking about. So I hope that one, Dr. NJARAMBA has offered that we can arrange another lesson another day. That will be highly appreciable. But for now, I would like him to understand that the registry is not limited in scope, it's not limited in area, it's not limited in jurisdiction. He can access it anywhere, anytime. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onyango, for that clarification. Philip, I hope you are in a better place now, and maybe we can organize later to do this differentiation between companies, businesses, association, and all that. But also, as Shigadi has said, that it's in the process. They are in the Registrar General's office is in the process of automating the registration of associations, so that your members do not have to come all the way to Nairobi to do the registration. So we hope that in the near future, that will no longer be a problem. With that, I think we are ready to move to the next session, I hope. Unless somebody has something else to say, please also remember there is the chat option. You can write down your concerns. I will read them and respond to them accordingly in case you've been locked out. Meanwhile, let's talk about statistics so far. Maybe just to bring you back, we are talking about using this Movable Property Security Rights Act and the collateral registry. And we are hoping that this helps us as businesses to access more, to have more access to credit. Today we are talking about this. Remember, you are the potential borrowers. You'll need to go to banks to get credit. So we are just telling you that there's this law that actually provides for this kind of thing, and banks and other financial institutions, the SACCOs, the microfinance institutions are aware of it, and they are ready to give you loans. So we hope that you will also go to them and offer your movable assets and security so that you can access credit. So maybe I just want to talk about the journey that we have taken so far. As it has been mentioned before, this law came into force in 2017. It has been around for about 3 years. And in the 3 years, we have made so much, we have taken so much strides into developing this law. I said at the beginning, my name is Rebecca. I am a practicing advocate. We have spoken to most of you, maybe when we were planning this program, most of you we have spoken on the phone. So basically what I'm going to talk about is how many registrations and searches have been done so far, what the business registration has done to make sure that the system is easy and conducive for both the financial institutions that are giving out loans and then borrowers that are going to these financial institutions to get credit. We will talk about achievements and any challenges that have been encountered so far in this system. Maybe just what to note at this point is that when these registrations are done, it's usually the financial institution that does. As Soita mentioned a while back, that the bank always would ask for his logbook and then they do all their other work that he doesn't really know what they are doing. Most of what they are doing is they are conducting due diligence to ensure that actually that logbook belongs to you or you have authority to use it. They will go and register a security right in this registry to make sure that their interests are protected and all those many things, and they will require your authority to register and so many other things. So as a borrower, you might not really get to do all these work of registration and all that. You will just get the notification that there was a notice that was put up in the registry. But so these are the notices that we talk about, that since 2017 so far, more than 320,000 notices have been registered in this collateral registry that is online, and over 37,000 searches have been done. This means that a lot of the loans that you are getting from financial institutions against your various movable assets, these financial institutions are actually registering these loans in the collateral registry to ensure that their interests are protected, and also just to because of course it's required for them to do that, and they have taken up the use of this. Of course, loans given against movable assets, which is actually examples that were given at the beginning of this training by Dr. NJARAMBA, form about more than 10% of all the loans that are given in Kenya. And this is a very good percentage. You can see that actually financial institutions are giving loans against household items, against crops, against animals, against so many other things, maybe if the stock in your businesses and all the other things that you may have as small business people or as business people generally. Of course, statistics have shown that more registrations are being done. Of course, we have spoken previously to lenders and told them that they need to do searches. Searches, of course, help financial institutions to learn whether the asset that you are presenting as security has already been used by another financial institution. So this is basically just to tell you that if you use maybe your car at bank A to get a loan, if you go to bank B to use the same car, this bank B is able to do a search in this online registry and tell you that you have already used this car another place. So they decide whether to give you a loan or not, depending on the value of the car and if the amount of loan you want is enough, the asset you want to use is enough to even protect their interest, even though you have used it elsewhere. These are just tables that basically show statistics of what has been happening in the past 3 years since 2017, the period 2017 to 2018. There were about slightly over 100,000 notices put up against maybe slightly below 4,000 searches. 2018 to 2019, similar trend, 120,000 notices against 17,000 searches. And in 2019 to 2020, that is this actually current period ending. This is June of 2020, last month, we saw that there were over 100,000 notices put up against 14,000 searches. Of course, this registration went drastically down from April. They have started picking up from June. You can see that in April we had the lowest number of notices put up at 3,500. In June, you can see that we have started going, the graph has started going up again. We are at 4,300. Of course, we can attribute the low registration to the pandemic that happened or started around that time in Kenya, and we can see that it really affected the lending trends, that less loans were being given, but we are just trying to use this opportunity to tell you that use your assets, to use whatever you have. Maybe the pandemic has really affected everyone and everyone's economic stability, and actually our income has really been affected negatively by the pandemic. But there is a way. We are basically telling you that whatever asset you have, try take it to a financial institutions. They will give you a loan with that as security, and you will be able to recover economically as we move forward from now. So basically, that is what the number of registrations and searches for the past 3 years. Of course, there was a survey that was done last year that indicated that a lot of people had confidence in this registry. That is about 68% of those people who participated in this survey by the World Bank indicated that they had trust in this registry. This registry has been up for 3 years so far. It has worked well. Being an online platform, this is really a good indication, and it's good that people are willing to use it and actually disseminate more credit facilities to people who would otherwise not access financial services, credit services from financial institutions. Of course, the CBK has also done some survey that showed that access to financial services has actually grown from 75% in 2016 to 82% as of last year. This shows that actually financial institutions are giving out more credit facilities to people, and this is because of this registry that was created. When banks and other lenders feel secure to give out loans, they would actually give out more loans. And this registry system has given them more confidence that in the event that a person is not able to pay a loan, they have a remedy, they have a way of ensuring they get back their loaned out money. So by virtue of this law, they have been encouraged or incentivized to lend out more to borrowers, which also is a good thing to you as micro and small enterprises, because when financial institutions are more willing to give out money, it's a good thing for you that you can actually access credit to grow your businesses. Of course, you can see that the number of actually the amount of money that is being loaned out by financial institutions has really grown in the past 1 or 2 years, from say 19.6 billion shillings to 43. That is more than double the amount, and it's also attributable to this new law that has been introduced. So you can actually see that the objectives that we talked about, that Dr. NJARAMBA talked about at the beginning as to why this law was necessary, you can see that we are actually achieving most of them. We are widening the access to financial services for many people. Of course, there is the ease of doing business, as Philip has said, that for most people actually moving from one place to come to Nairobi to do business is actually hectic for them, and they would rather have to do this business from where they are. You see, for example, a law like this one in particular ensures that you don't need to move from one place to another to do any kind of registration. It's online. It can be done from wherever a person is, and as Shigadi has indicated, we are hopeful that in the near future almost all the services will be online, so that it's easy for all business people to be able to access such services. Of course, all this progress has reflected in actually the ranking of Kenya in the ease of doing business. In 2018, we were at position 61. In 2019, we are at position 56. So generally, when we improve sectors of the economy and how business is done, it generally reflects on the economy of the entire country, which is good. And this will be the trend will continue because, of course, times are changing, things are getting automated with the technological advancement, and we are happy that the business registration service is keeping up with the dynamic nature of doing business in the world. Of course, these change, all of these progress is attributed to the business registration service and what they have done over the last period of years. You can see this is a graphical representation of what they have been doing. So basically, this is a government effort to ensure that business people have an easy time of doing things. We have seen from what Shigali has mentioned that everything from registration of a business is now online. It takes a shorter time. So many things have been put online to make it easy for people to do business. And clearly we can see that the world is getting digitized even now that we are doing this training online. We are happy that even the small actually and micro enterprises are here to attend this online. It's a clear indication that things are getting digitized. Of course, as I have mentioned, this has really improved on financial inclusion. People who ordinarily maybe they don't own a piece of land, which traditionally is what banks would like to have to offer credit against, people who do not have motor vehicles. You can use the stock in your shop, you can use the crops in your farm if you're a farmer, and so many other things to make sure that you can get a loan from a financial institution to expand your business, which is really a good thing. We are happy that this initiative is working, and actually financial institutions are taking it up. So it's a good thing. Of course, the issue about registration online has clarified issues of priority. Dr. Njaramba talked about priority and ensuring that a financial institution feels secure, which encourages them to even lend more. These and many other benefits. Dr. Njaramba talked about intellectual property and how it can be used as security against loans. This is basically good for people who are maybe mostly young people who are creative, creating music, creating art, and so many other things. They can use the rights in such creative arts as security against loans. Maybe just a few challenges so far. Maybe of course, this is a challenge mostly for the lenders. They feel like the digital lenders such as Tala, Branch are creating some kind of competition for them. Because, you see these digital lenders ordinarily, maybe most of you have borrowed money from some of these digital lenders. You'll notice that they do not ask for collateral, but you'll also notice that their interest rates are quite high. So we're trying to encourage you to use collateral and take it to the financial institution so that you get actually loans that have better terms and better interest rates for you. So basically just those are mostly the few challenges. Something like maybe the cost of conducting a search, such as mostly this will be done by the banks and the other financial institutions. When you go to get a loan, they would pay 500 shillings to do a search to ensure that whatever asset you are presenting has not already been used to get a loan elsewhere. Of course, the 500 shillings is necessary for maintaining of the registry and running of this online platform. But because financial institutions have raised concern about it being a bit high, the business registration service is trying to see what they can do to ensure that actually financial institutions are encouraged to do, or lenders are encouraged to do these searches. So as you can see, there isn't a lot of challenges with this system. It's basically a success story, and we hope that it will be, and we'll see even better results with time. Maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, things will be better compared to how they are now. So that is basically it about how far we have come so far. I don't know if anyone has a question regarding that. Anybody with a question?
I have not so much question, but a comment.
Yes, please.
It's in regards to the interest of the financial institutions. But
Yes.
I'm getting some feedback. Okay, it's in regards to the interest of the financial institutions that protecting the interest of the MSEs in our economy. The MSEs have to register their MPRS property with the facility that we have, that we are being trained on today. Because what happens is that we need to create a critical mass of properties registered. Otherwise, what happens is that, you know, the financial institutions are aware they have information at their tips, and they are able to use that information to lend to the MSEs at very exorbitant rates. So that it is actually incumbent on the MSEs to turn that around by cooperating and working with the BRS, Business Registration Services Board, to register their property so that when they profile this property to the financial institution, there will be a critical mass that would actually lower the price of such. For example, it would lower ultimately the price of lending based on their property. So that at a certain point, especially at the tail end of your presentation, it actually struck me that what in registering this property. And thank you again for the training. That is what we begin from today. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. I don't know if someone has something to say. Anyone else with a comment?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Saita.
Yes, Rebecca.
Go ahead.
Yes, I've been following the discussions and I'm very much interested. And I'm very happy that we are heading somewhere. Now, you have talked about the statistics related to the research that you have carried out. And the one thing that comes out clearly is you have compared the number of searches versus the registered notices.
Yes.
But one thing that I want to ask you is about this issue of Angels Capital. I don't know whether you know something called Angels Capital. We have people in this Kenya or the rest of the world who have a lot of money and they want to lend out. They operate more or less like Shylocks or money sharks, but they are not the same. So in our financial system in Kenya, for instance, we may not recognize so much the role played by money sharks or Shylocks. And then the business angels, those who are ready to give out money freely so that the SMEs can start business as part of the venture capital arrangements. So how is this new law that we are discussing today going to favor these kinds of people? Because now you seem to be dealing with the commercial banks and big financing institutions. And as I've heard, you have seen the operations of the fintech lenders who seems to be threatening the operations of commercial banks in Kenya. So how is this going to be an advantage to people like Shylocks and business angels? Because they also need to be protected when they give out their money.
Rebecca, can I answer that?
Okay, go on.
Yeah, Mr. Soita, there is no money that is free. There is somewhere I heard you mention they have a lot of free money they want to give. No money is free at all. But what I think we had mentioned earlier was this, that this law and this registry is available for use by anybody and everybody, to a point that even if you you have lent some money, and then he decides to tell you that my phone is the security, then you will become the creditor and you will be able to register your initial notice as such. So what that means is that where you have agents and Shylocks and whoever else wants to lend money, this is the law that they will use as long as there is a movable asset being used as security. And therefore, this law does not, for example, place banks and other financial institutions to an advantage as such. It just says everybody who can lend any amount of money can be able to use this. And that's why the statistics that we have at the collateral registry at the moment, you will find that there are amounts running from as low as 10,000 shillings or such figures and going up to billions. Even companies are using this law to borrow a lot of money. And therefore, there is no limit, and there is nobody who can't use the system, and there is nobody who is favored by the system. As long as there is an asset that is being used as security, you register under this law without exception.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. NJARAMBA, for that. I think we can move on to the next session. If everyone is satisfied.
Yes, we can move on. We can move on.
Okay, I'm just getting the next session. The next session will be guided by Tom Onguru. Mr. Tom Onguru is a head of Business Solutions Center at the Kenya Institute of Management. He is certified trainer and capacity building expert. He has trained micro and small enterprises on many different issues. So he will have a lot of information to share with you, and maybe just to help you in what to do to grow your businesses. Mr. Onguru, I don't know if you're ready.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Let me just try to see if I can project my slide so that I share with you. Okay. Are you able to see my slide? Rebecca, can you see it? I hope everyone can see it.
Yes, okay. We can see it.
Let me just pull it up into presentation mode. So just a minute. Great. So thank you very much, Dr. NJARAMBA, Rebecca, and the team. I'm excited to be part of this session today. And I think just like what Rebecca said, I'm more of a amicus curiae to this kind of program, because you realize it's more legal and technical legal jargons as demystified by Dr. NJARAMBA. So me, I'm an amicus curiae on matters of business excellence. And therefore, I just want to share with you some perspectives as far as business management is concerned. We are excited to be part of this program. As mentioned earlier on, my name is Tom Onguru, Head of Business Solutions Center at the Kenya Institute of Management. I'm a trainer and also consultant. That's just my brief bio in terms of what I do. But besides my role in KIM as Head of Business Solutions Center, where I take care of 4 departments, training and conferences, SME solutions, consultancy, and of course the prestigious Company of the Year awards, I've also been involved in some kind of project with the Kenya Bankers Association in developing Inuka enterprise programs. So if you go to the KBA site, there's www.inukasme.co.ke. This is a program sponsored by KBA to build capacity of MSMEs so as to help them access finance, bank credit. And of course, I was privileged to be part of that team as a project director from KIM to develop curriculum, and I've also been involved in some training of SMEs. I think through KBA, we have trained around 2,000 SMEs across the country, both online and also offline. Now, so I'm excited to be part of this, and we worked closely with NJARAMBA, Dr. Jaramba and the team in doing capacity building plan for this program and also the curricula. So today I just want to share with you some aspects of business management. I know we've talked about collateral, and I'm excited about this because we are talking about the movable collateral regime that has come into effect. And when we talk about collateral, in my interaction with SMEs, so let me just put a disclaimer. So I'm not here representing the banks. So please, technical questions about financial institutions in terms of lending, please spare me for that. I'm just here talking about the things that we've seen cutting across in terms of challenges that SMEs are facing in accessing finance. And why we chose this topic today of business plan, as much as you have the collateral and everything, there are certain things which are quite critical, which will determine your success in terms of accessing the funding. And one of those things that you realize that as much as you have your collateral, it's registered and all that, those are the salient factors that you may want to look at as an entrepreneur. Because you might be wondering, how come I've registered my property, I've done all this, but then I'm still being denied, credit. Now, in banking sector, we talk of the 5 C's of lending. Now, this is very, very critical for us to understand that as business people, as you manage your business, there are certain things that you may also need to look at. And you see, in the 5 C's of lending, in fact, collateral is the 5th C, coming at the final end. There are certain things that you also, as a business person, may want to look at. And the first C is about character, right? Now, the question is, can the business owner be trusted to repay the loan based on his or her personality? So it's very important that as an entrepreneur, you look at your character. I mean, what kind of character you have? What do people say about you, right? Have you been involved in certain issues? Because Rebecca talked about banks doing due diligence, that you present your, to the registry, your property details, and they still know those things they do in the back office. Now, those are some of the things they look at. So if you ever been involved in certain scandals and all that, you realize that your risk level gets higher. And that can also determine whether you get that credit, or if you are to get that credit. Of course, now we have the restricted interest regime. At what cost? Because like Dr. NJARAMBA said, there's no free money. Even if you are talking about angel investors, when you're talking about debt and equity financing, there's a cost to capital. So it's important as entrepreneurs that you look at your character in terms of the character of people you have in the business, whether they are your directors. Dr. NJARAMBA talked about when you're talking about a company, when you're forming a company with several directors. So you look at the character of these people. I've known cases that I've seen where a business is being denied tax compliance register because some of the directors are actually registered in CRB. So it's very, very important, because if you have directors that have got good character, they have got good, rapport with the financial institutions, then it's easier to access lending. Now, the second C is about capacity, right? So when you talk about capacity here, we are talking about capacity in the sense that as a business, all right, that maybe you are looking at your business and you are looking at what you want. The question is, does the business have the ability to repay the loan, okay? So if, let's say, the evaluation of the business is done and looking at your business and all that, the portfolio could be like worth 100,000, and then you're applying for a loan of 10 million. Do you have the capacity as a business? All right. The third C is about capital, okay? Now, what is the amount of money the business owner would lose if the business fails? Remember, any financing that is done, there's a cost of capital. So in terms of that capital, because even the financial institutions, they are not really interested in closing your business. They are also interested in ensuring that there's business continuity, all right? There's sustainability of your business. And that is why you realize of late there have been discussions around moratorium, financial institutions giving borrowers some kind of repayment holidays, so that there's some aspect of sustainability, and you can discuss with your bank on issues of restructuring of your debt and all that. Then the fourth thing is about conditions. Is the business environment supportive of its growth and ability to repay the loan? Right. So when you look at the business environment, what the lenders will be looking at is what is the business environment you're operating in, right? Is the environment quite supportive to the growth of the business? Because they also interested in terms of seeing whether you have the capacity to repay the loan. So if the conditions are actually not very conducive, you realize the banks will be taking a backseat. And that is now why you realize even right now it's quite a bit of a task for financial institutions to lend money to business people until we get past this kind of COVID-19. Then the fifth C is about collateral, which we've been talking about, right? So when you're talking about collateral here, excuse please. When you're talking about collateral, sorry for that. When you're talking about collateral here, we are talking about if the business fails to repay the loan, what will the bank take as security? And this is what we are talking about, that we are now moving from the fixed assets as they are, and of course talking about movable assets that this act and regime is actually all about, that you can now use even your laptop as a movable asset. You can use even, if you have herds of cows and all that, of course, in the farm, anything movable that can be used as a security. So these are the 5 C's of lending that, as much as we are talking about collateral, collateral is not all there is. Yes, it's critical because it's an aspect of security, but there are also other 4 C's that, as an entrepreneur, you may need to pay attention to. Now, one of those important inputs into the whole thing is about business plan. And why we talk about this, if you are looking for funding, especially from financial institutions, you are looking for strategic investors and all that, they will ask you for a business plan. Whether you are submitting any proposal to the bank, because the BRS, and when you talk about the collateral, is about registration of the movable assets. But remember, there's also the whole cog with the financial institutions in terms of your credit worthiness as an entrepreneur. And that's why one of those things you realize that many institutions will be asking for is a business plan. Do you have that strategic thinking? All right. And of course, when you talk about that, you realize that strategic thinking and planning, all these have very strong impact on the financial performance of SMEs, because it therefore clarifies to any possible lender that you have a strategic way of thinking that you can be able to tell in the next 2 years or so, this is where I expect my business to be, right? Otherwise, it will be more of like a consumer kind of approach, because if you don't really know where you are going, it can become a challenge. So when you're talking about getting funding or going for debt or credit for 5 years, it will be important for any possible lender just to understand what is your roadmap to your business in terms of where you want to go. Now, failure in small businesses often relates to an overall lack of strategic management skills and abilities. And this is our experience in dealing with many entrepreneurs. I've actually trained quite a number of SMEs for banks, equity SMEs. I've trained DTB through the umbrella of KBA. And quite a number of these issues come around the issue of management, strategic management skills and abilities, where you realize that as a business, as you get to grow, you need to start putting certain structures that are able to secure your business to operate into the far future. All right. So it's very important that you get to articulate strategies that will help you reach your customers, develop adequate systems of performance measurement, Why this is important? Because what cannot be measured cannot be improved. So it's important that you have those good performance measurements in place, good control mechanisms, and we'll be just seeing some of the areas that banks actually focus on. Even when you present to them a business plan, some of those things that will be critical success factors. And then you look at also strategic planning, which is quite an essential ingredient for SME survival. You realize that most of the SMEs, they don't survive beyond their third birthday, because either somebody realized that, yes, they had funds, but you see, just funds because you may have a lot of stocks in your business in terms of inventory, but if you don't have proper planning mechanism, you may not really be knowing whether you're making losses or not. And even if you, let's say you go and get this financing and all that, banks or any institution lending money will be interested in knowing whether your business will be able to survive. And that is why business or strategic planning become quite a key in the whole process. Now, there are what we call the 3 key characteristics of SMEs with strategic and operational measures. We always say whatever cannot be measured cannot be improved, so that you get to know, where am I as I'm starting, where do I expect to be in the next 6 months, in the next 1 year. Now, what are those key characteristics of SMEs that have these measures? 1, capital structure. Yes, so you have a kind of a capital structure that is based on longer term sources of finance, basically for stability and flexibility. If you talk to financial guys, they'll be able to tell you that equity financing is even more expensive than debt financing. And that is when our friend Mr. Soita was talking about angel investors. Yes, they're there, but you realize even funds from owners of the business is quite more expensive, because at the end of the day, they expect dividends as shareholders. They're investing their money. And therefore, with banks, as you go for bank in terms of debt and getting that credit access, they can be able to structure your debt in a manner that they also work with you as you run your business. So your capital structure will be very key, and it will be important for them to understand the long-term sources of your finance. It's not just about what we want to do this month, this quarter. Do you have a kind of a plan? And that will be quite critical when you have a structured business plan that can communicate all these issues. Then understanding the value of competitive positioning is very key in terms of understanding the deep knowledge of your customers, what they want, what they expect, and what they're prepared to pay for. Remember, you are looking at also what is happening in the business environment, so that you also have a kind of both industry analysis and, where possible, some understanding of what happens in the macro environment. So when you do this, it gives you a better competitive positioning as a business, because they'll be understanding who else is in this market, right? What are your customers looking for? And these are critical things that you realize that it goes beyond just registering your collateral. It's also important to understand those fundamental factors that drive business success, all right? Such SMEs that have strategic and operational measures, they have a focus and there's cohesiveness in which clear values are articulated by top management, and there's some sense of common purpose which constitute the business culture. Again, as your business gets to grow, there's a culture that you want to institute in the business. Maybe you as an entrepreneur, you had this bigger vision, but your business has now grown where now you are bringing employees on board. The question is, what cultural fabric do you want to create around your organization in terms of defining how you do things, how people behave, and how the market gets to perceive you? Very, very important. Now, because of time, let me just share with you very briefly what a business plan is. A business plan is basically a written formal document that captures the goals of the business and the reasons the business owners anticipate attaining them. Remember, this is a very important input. Even when you are looking for funding, when you are going to the bank, you are doing proposals, you are looking for investors, they want to really understand whether you have some goals in the business, and how do you intend to attain those goals. Now, why is this important? It defines where you are now as a business or an SME. It gives an outline of your business. It defines the location and the premises where you're operating from, your product or services, the market you operate in. It gives some kind of highlight about your customers, your competition, and staffing and equipment. Because again, there's the people component that will help you in terms of driving the business success. Then very fast, we look at the uses of a business plan. Of course, this you'll find across board. If you check around, it helps you start a new business, because there could be also those people thinking of going into business, like the micro enterprises. Maybe they're operating from the boots of their car, selling certain merchandise. The question is, how do you structure that? Like, what that means, you can have a business plan before you even start a business, all right? Maybe you are still in the office working, but you intend to go into entrepreneurship. So you can have an initial plan on paper that defines what you want to do and clearly defines the future, the roadmap of your business, so that if you are going to look for partners or people to give you funding support, they can have a view of what your business is looking like and how it will translate to be maybe in the next 2 or so years. Then growing an existing business is one of the uses of a business plan that, how do you recognize, the resources that you need to put in place to stimulate the growth of that business. You can use a business plan to attract new investors to a business. Investors would like to understand the profitability of their intended investment from financial facts and figures. So it's not just like, I see this fantastic business, I have an idea, it will really work. We had people starting quill eggs and quill businesses, and what happened down the time. So it's quite clear that you must have a clear roadmap so that any possible investor or any possible lending institution here can be able to understand the roadmap in terms of facts and figures. It has to be very clear. Now that will help them in terms of doing the valuation of the business. For example, maybe the business you're running, you want to sell it. So how do you know the value? Okay. Sometimes people tell you that I have this shop I'm selling, it's a beauty shop. So they tell you it's costing 200,000. So how do you know it's 200,000? Have you looked at things like goodwill and all that, so that you have a proper valuation of your business? And for you to do that, you need to capture it in a business plan. Just the same way, if you have an asset, you have a car, whatever it is, you do valuation so that when you are selling, or let's say you want to now go and get other shareholders into place and get to share whatever the business value is, you can be able to know how to structure that share in terms of percentages. And of course, creating business linkages, quite important, because again, it helps you also network. I was excited to hear about teams talking about associations, that you now go beyond just, an SME as an entity, of course, registered by BRS. And I want to commend BRS because I think when it comes to efficiency, their online platform through eCitizen is quite efficient. I tried it and registered a business. I mean, you don't even have to follow up, and it's quite efficient, which is a good thing. Now, you now get to the next level where you form associations, the MSE and all that. So what that tells you is that you can be able to get some business information, lobby on behalf of your members, and this also helps you because you have a strategic business plan, which also helps you make certain decisions. So those are some of the uses of a business plan. Now, what are banks looking for in a business plan? Ideal business plan, what I've done is just to look at certain parts and the details which are very critical. And why this is important is that even let's say you are involving somebody or a consultant to help you develop a business plan, even if you are not a business expert, you just have a kind of an outline of what to expect, because sometimes we say a consultant is somebody who asks you for your watch and tells you the time and you pay handsomely. So if you decide to engage somebody, just ensure that some of these things are captured. So banks, they'll be keen on executive summary, which you'll do last, which is more of just a business outlook at a glance. It must be precise and to the point, and this might be all that will be read to make very crucial decisions, whether to give you money or not. Then the company and of course business description, where you describe your business in terms of size, the directors you have. Remember, we talked about character as the first C of lending. Notice the point there that some directors may have a good track record with financials and therefore increasing your chances of getting financial support. So when you're talking about incorporating directors into your business, it's also very, very important. Don't just look at their competence in terms of either academic qualifications and all that, but also you want to look at the character. I'm aware of a business that was being denied tax compliance certificate because some of their directors are listed with CRB. So I guess that's not what you really want to, that's not what you want to open to your business. Now, the other part or a component of a business plan is product and services, where you just talk about how the business will utilize opportunities and manage risks, threats, of course, highlighted in the SWOT analysis, and of course, just description in terms of what are you offering to the market. And when you talk about your offer, it's also important to look at your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And looking at it from both customer perspective and also from the competitor perspective, so that you can be talking about sustainability of your offer in the marketplace. And banks will be very interested in this, just to understand, is it just like a Quilex business, or there's some sustainability? Right now, there are lots of things coming up because of the corona issue. And of course, the question is, will that business still survive post-COVID-19? Then there's the bit of market analysis in terms of what is the size of your market, and is there a likelihood of long-term profitability to be able to repay loan and create income? And that is why when you do a profitability analysis, the banks or financial institutions will be very keen to understand what is the market like. Is it substantial enough, right? What is the competitive environment around that? Because remember, they are lending you money because they expect you to pay that money together with interest. So if what you're investing in is not really profitable, then it therefore means that they may not really be guaranteed of that profit expected. Then marketing, sales strategy, the capacity of the business to maintain profitability in long term, issues of staffing and management, and here we are talking about capacity of staff to run business and the cost of maintaining them. Now, this is quite critical because one of the challenges we encounter with SMEs is the issue of succession planning. It's only the person, the owner, if it's a family business, the father has the capital and it's the father who knows where the money goes to and what needs to be bought and those that need to be paid. It's important that even if you are saying, which is not wrong, you can still have a family running business, but as you get to grow, you realize that you may want to involve certain people from outside to help you run the business and get to, bring in some kind of professionalism so that there's also the aspect of sustainability and this year's succession planning. I think it's quite obvious, and you are seeing this around, some of those family businesses that were not let to fly in time have had lots of challenges, and you can see this happening in the retail industry, the supermarkets, because of the challenges of some family members not let
I don't know if I'm the one or we've lost Stonguru. Tom, we've lost you.
Yeah, he's out of.
Tom, I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe he has issues with the internet. Let's give him a minute. Let's give him a minute. Hopefully he will be back soon. As we wait for Tom, maybe if there's anyone with a question for him, you can be putting it down in the chat. If it's a question that you can write down, so that when he comes back and finalizes on his presentation, he will respond to your questions. Anyone with a question in the other areas other than Tom's presentation, this is a good time to take advantage as we wait for him.
Just an observation.
Yes.
Yes, it's one around the difference between the SMEs and MSEs.
Sorry?
The difference between the SMEs and the MSEs is something that we need to keep at the back of our mind, so that as we talk about SMEs, then we know that essentially we are talking about MSEs. The MSE Act defines MSEs as both formal and informal. And that actually goes to the question of, you know, at the beginning of the business startup, are we dealing with an SME or an MSE? So it actually says that it is both formal and informal. Someone can have a business idea that they are implementing without actually registering the business. So as it's coming back, we'd like to keep it at the back of our mind that even in seeking capital for businesses, as you said rightfully, there is a cost to capital. But as an economy, we also have an opportunity cost to capital that when MSEs as a critical mass are left outside the formal economy, then there is an opportunity cost and the whole economy suffers. That is why this business, this training is important, to bring on board the MSEs, both the formal and informal, to understand what really is involved in the cost of capital and how to harness the collateral. So what our businesses do is to organize capital for business. But associations, it is the work of associations to organize the businesses, so that as a federation, we then come in and we organize the associations. So as we understand it, that there's a structure and a hierarchy on how an economy runs concerning businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your contribution, Mr. Oshia. I don't know if Dr. NJARAMBA, you have any comments on that?
No, that's okay what Mr. Osheng has said. Eh? Now, I want to suggest that, Rebecca, I want to suggest that we see whether we can proceed with the next presentation as we wait for Tom, just in case. I think he was at the tail end of his presentation, but
Yes,
I think we can start with the other one as we wait for him, so that perhaps whatever had remained, he can basically address it later on, perhaps as he answers to the questions, because of time.
That's all right. Let me get Larry.
Yes, Rebecca, I wanted to add on something just from the previous presentation before we move on. I don't know whether you are hearing me.
We can hear you, Soita. We can hear you.
Okay, the previous person presenting was touching on something to do with as part of the business plan, but he mentioned something to do with the challenges of succession planning in small enterprises. Now, it's important to understand that whether it's a small enterprise or a big enterprise, all companies you see around, private firms, are always owned by families. And I want, for the benefit of those who may want to do further research on this, if you can refer to something called three-circle model of family business. Three-circle model of family business, because always businesses are owned by families. And we have to always to strive to make sure that we introduce the members of our families to run those businesses. Eventually, they can become the managing directors, the way the Indians do. So that is just a comment and a contribution which maybe people don't know about the three-circle model of family business. And as Mr. Ocheng has just highlighted from MSE, I think they are doing a lot of work now that we are focusing on small businesses, and even we try to categorize them into different classes. My area of interest myself is about manufacturing operations. That's what I teach mostly at the university. And even the previous speaker, I've seen he has qualifications in Lean Six Sigma, black belt. That's the highest level of knowledge in operations excellence in organizations. So MSE Federation, which is, I think the chair is Mr. Ocheng, is doing a lot of work. And I think you know this. And we are there to support them. Even we want to make SMEs, especially my area of interest of manufacturing, we want to start even making beer at the local level. Why is it that the Kenya breweries alone and others are able to, now that we have devolution? So that is the thinking behind all this. Thank you very much.
That's noted. Yeah, that's noted. Thank you, Soita. That's noted. Rebecca, I don't know whether Larry is ready to proceed.
Yes, Larry is ready. Larry, please carry on. Larry is going to, sorry, just 1 second, Larry. Larry is going to show us how the registry works. We've been talking about this registry since morning. Larry is the very smart gentleman who developed this registry and actually knows the inside and out of how it works, and he's going to take you through and basically just demonstrate to you what happens in the registry and how you would go about it if you wanted to use this particular collateral registry. So, Larry, when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And yes, the name is Larry, and we are the ones who developed the BRS registry. I think that also encompasses the business registry system and the e-citizen as a whole. So how the system was made majority of the time is this system is more of a system that is for lenders who would want to register people who are taking loans. So majority of the time, this is how this will work. So what I'll try and do is I'll try and explain to you how a lender, how the journey that a lender takes so as to put your data onto the system. That is where I will start. Then I will explain exactly how a lender, how as a borrower, how you can get to know more information about yourself. That is how I will work this. So my application, My presentation will basically be not my usual long one. It will be a little bit shortened one, where I will try and explain to you what a lender does, a little bit of what a lender does. Once we get to what a lender does, I will show you how a lender will register a notice, how they amend a notice, how they cancel a notice. Then I will show you how a lender gets to look for information about borrowers on the system. So I will share my screen. Minute. There you go. So lenders, my majority of the time, will come to this particular site. Now, basically, this is how they do. So if they don't have an account, they will create an account. If they do, which is there, and creating account falls under 3 particular ways. There's this e-business. I will show you how to get to that within the application. So the first bit is they will need to first log in, and you can log in as an e-citizen, a foreign resident, and a visitor. So basically, the difference is an e-citizen is for a Kenyan national, foreign resident is for a foreigner who's come into the country and has been given an alien ID, and e-visitor is somebody who is from a different country and has not registered as a foreign resident. Basically, that is what you do. So I believe most of us have logged into e-citizen, so it's nice and straightforward, where to create an account, you basically give us ID details, you give us your name and email address, phone number, and a password. So that is how an account is created. So maybe I can just throw in my details. That's my ID, and my name is Larry. So when you click on verify, it pulls details from IPRS. So that is what it does. Then we are required to put an email address, phone number, and a password. So the next bit will be, here you will see we'll send a code to your email, we'll send a code to your phone number, and we'll require you to upload a photo, though the photo is not mandatory for now. So I will go back to how they log in. So how they log in is basically you click on the login button, you'll put your user details, that is your ID number and your password. Once you put that, you land to the e-citizen homepage where there are different government services. The service that we are most interested in right now is business registry service. That is this one. So what we'll expect you to do is basically click on it, and of course we'll ask you to log in again. The reason we ask you to log in for the second time is there are times where people hijack other people's accounts. So this is more so the business registry system. Just a snippet of it. It shows you details about yourself, shows you details about any corrections you have, shows a session of where your ID details could be, then shows an application that you could have been doing before. So this is the we call it the live server. So I want to move away from the live server and go to a test server. Right, this is a test server. So basically, the system looks something like this. So now, what a lender does is, as a lender, say you're a lender and you already have, you've been given access to your business, so they will be given access to this particular page. So what a lender will do is, a lender will go into their e-business account. Once inside their e-business account, they will click on the collateral registry. So once they click on the collateral registry, the system now changes where it is now giving the lender the opportunity to input details about a borrower. So what they do to input details about a borrower is very straightforward, where they click on initial notice. Once they click on an initial notice, they will fill in the application. The application falls under 4 different categories, 4 different steps, I would say. So the first step is basically details, particulars of the grantor. So they want to know the details of the person who has given the collateral. The collateral here being the property that is being used to gain the loan. Maybe I've used the wrong words, I can be corrected. So what they would do is, one, they would give in details. So here I would, just give me 1 second. I want to use a different server. This one is not the correct one. It will be just a minute. Yes, this is the one I always use. So what they do is, a moment, you look for your company. Where's my company? I always use a company called PesaFlow. Yes. There. So we were at that particular point. So you put details of the grantor. So as a grantor, we will say the grantor is could fall under different categories. The grantor could be a Kenyan citizen, a foreign resident. So these are the same types of I would say of a grantor that we are looking for. So if it is an individual, you say it's a Kenyan citizen, then you put in their ID. So I will put an ID that I always use. Then you validate. So validate basically shows that this is the particular grantor, puts the name of that particular person. KRA PIN is not a mandatory field. Then you put their details. There, we want an email address and a phone number. So now details of the grantor has been captured. So these are the details that whenever somebody else is coming to search to see if this person has a loan or not, these are the details that we will go with, which I will show shortly. So step one, they input details of the grantor. Step two will be details of the company that is giving out the loan. So if you are a person who also gives out a loan, we will expect you to do the same. If it is a company, we'll expect you to log in as your company and make the application. If it is an individual who's making a loan, I will just show you that next. So next, you tell us about the type of the credit. Who are you? Are you consensual or non-consensual? Then we auto-populate details of the person who's logged in. So this we pick details because PesaFlow is logged in. PesaFlow is the same person who actually inputs the details. So the third step is details of the collaterals. So the collaterals is the information, not the information, what you have put in to be given a loan. So what we try and encourage the lenders is don't bundle the information. Put the information into many. So make sure you can make sure if they are crops, you say they are maize. You can add a little bit more, say household equipment, chairs, equipment, my laptop. That has been put in. Now, next, we want to know details of this particular borrower. So the details of the borrower could fall under one of two. So the first one is maybe you've taken the loan as an individual. We want the institution or the person giving the loan to tell us if it is an individual. If it is an enterprise, we would want them to tell us if it is an enterprise. Over and above that, we would want to know if it is an enterprise, it falls under which particular category. Is it a micro? Is it a small, is it medium, or is it large? We would want to know exactly that. We can say it is large. Then next, we would want to know if it is a woman-led enterprises. We've given you a small description here just to find out what that is, so you can choose from one of that. Next, most of the collateral registries should not exceed 10 years. So here on the period of effectiveness, that is the period in which the notice should run, it should not exceed 120 months. So 120 months is basically 10 years. So you can put anything below 120 months. Then next, we want you to tell us about the amount that has been secured. You can say if it is the amount there. Some people always take loans using different currency. One was Kenya shilling, another one was euros. So we would expect the institution to give us that. And over and above that, before he moves to the next one, he needs to confirm to us, they need to confirm to us that authorization from the guarantor has been obtained before you move on. So if you say no, the application does not move on. But if you say yes, the application will move. Once that has been filled, we'll give you a page where you review the information that has been given and you approve. So this, we are presuming that the person who's giving the loan is an institution. So if it was Larry giving a loan to somebody else, what we'd expect him to do is you come to your homepage and within my application, Now, how you know you are within a company application or my application, the name shows on the top left. That's left or my right, whichever that is. So it shows your name. So once you're within, it shows your name, you come here and click collateral registry. Now, any registry that you do here, those are registries that I have given my money. So the same applies. So if you've borrowed somebody's money, we would want you to put that particular notice here so that in case of anything, in case you there's a collateral that has been given, the priority actually falls with the first person who put in the notice. So the same applies. So basically, the process is the same. You come here, you put your grantor's details. I will use the same ID I always use. Don't know this individual. One day we will meet. There you go. I'm just throwing in random information. And a phone number. So there we've put details of the grantor. So this is the person who owns the property. Then next, I am the person lending. You see, automatically the system has populated my names. So all we need to do is just the small bits that are left out. The system will require that. And you tell us if it is consensual or non-consensual. Once you're done with section 2, you save and move on to the next one, where we would want we would want the lender to tell us what collateral they used. So I can say I'm using, let me say some equipment. Tell us the nature of equipment. You can be very precise, not precise. Tell us exactly what is happening according to the security agreements. Then next, we would want to tell us who you've borrowed to money. So it was an individual, and then that individual, was it male or female? We'll say it's female. Next, the same applies where we would want to know the period of effectiveness. How long is this person get the loan for? And also the amount. You give in the amount. Once you give in the amount, again, we will need to force you to tell us if authorization has been obtained. So if authorization has been obtained, we'll accept that, approve, and the notice has been placed. So one thing you will need to understand is once you click on the approve button, the notice has already been put in, or has already been put up on the system, and anybody else will come after you. So the notice has already been put up. You can click on the download button to download the notice. This is a test server, so I've never checked why I always get an error. But on the live server, once you put a notice and you click on the download, the notice downloads. So basically, this is how a notice is put. Then when you get to a point where there are changes, say I gave a loan to Mr. Frank of 1,000, and today he wants a little bit more money, you would need to amend that particular notice. So how you amend the notice is you come back to your notice tab. You will see the notice here. Now, once the notice is here, you can always click on the amend notice. So for you to amend notice is basically you're able to amend anything within the application. So Mr. Frank decided to give us a little bit more me, the lender, I have given them a little bit more money. So I will go to the stage. This is where, so we add a couple of zeros, and that is the only change I was doing. Once you do the change, now that particular change has been done. So now what the system does is we will not search the original notice. We will now start searching the second notice, the updated notice. We call it the amended notice. So that is how you make changes to a notice. Then finally, the day we finish with Mr. Ware and there are no more loans, he has fully paid up his loan. So we will expect you, the creditor, to go back to the system and cancel that particular notice. So how you do that is you click on that particular notice. You will find this is the notice that we are talking about. You will click on and will cancel that notice. For you to cancel the notice, it's as simple as that. What we'll expect you to do is basically tell us why you're canceling. So we'll say grantor's authorization has been obtained, or better still, something else. We can say other and completed paying his loan. They've completed paying their loan. So once that is done, you give us the date on when that particular loan was completed. Once that is done, now what that does is it cancels the notice. Now that notice will not be searchable, but within me, the creditor, I will always be able to see all notices that have been done and what have been cancelled and what have been amended. Now that basically forms what a creditor does. So hiyo ndio chenye creditor hufanya in regards to kukupatia loan na kuweka kwa collateral notice. Now chenye as a borrower, ukitaka kujua kama property yako imeshikwa mahali popote na unataka kujua, unaweza fanya ni the same, you log on to the system na utafika hapo. Ukishafika hapo, what you do is simple. Falls under two ways. Una search. So kusearch is basically una make application, una click hapo make application na unakuja kwa collateral registry search request. So tutakwambia hapa kwanga imejaa maneno, una click hapo apply now. So najua ID yangu. So chenye ndatumia ni hapa kwa search criteria. There are two ways in which unaweza tumia search criteria. Either unaweza tumia chassis number ya gari ama unaweza tumia ID yangu as mimi mwenye nataka kujua status yangu kwa collateral registry. So unaenda hapo kwa grantors identifier, then unachagua ID na unaweka ID namba yako hapo. Ukishaweka ID namba yako hapo, una click on search to continue, una approve that, na hii ndio the only application utalipia. So chenye unalipia hapa ni una make sure that unaangalia kwa system kuona ID yako imetumiwa na nani. So kulipa ni straightforward, so kulipa, okay. Kulipa utaenda M-Pesa na unalipa hiyo 500. So dakika moja nilipe. So ukishalipa, hii application inatokea immediately. So immediately umelipa tu hivyo, utapata download. Na hii download itakuonesha kila mahali penye ID number yenye umetumia imetumika kwa system. So hiyo chenye unafanya, una click hapo kwa download, ita-download notice, ita-download search request. Ikisha download itakuonesha, wacha nibadilishe hapo, itakuonesha kila mahali penye ID yako imetumika. So hii ID kama hii yenye nimetumia inaonesha hapa ndio jina yake na inakuonesha kila mahali penye hii ID imetumika. Mimi hutumia hii ID kila saa. So itakuonesha. So kama uko na shida yoyote na hizi notices zozote, so hii ni notice ya kwanza, unaweza angalia uone hiyo ni yangu, hiyo ni sawa. Ya pili, hii sikumbuki mahali penye nilichukua hii loan. So kama uoni mahali penye ulichukua hiyo loan, hiyo ndio masaa yenye itabidi contact BRS, collateral registry, waambie okay, kwanza uko na option ya kwanza where unaweza contact mwenye anasema amekupatia loan, umwambie hii loan sikuchukua kwako, tafadhali toa hiyo loan kutoka kwa registry. So wasipotoa hiyo loan kutoka kwa registry, hiyo ndio sasa unaweza kuja kwa registry yenyewe na waambie hii loan ya pili hii yenye jamaa ananiambia nimeweka kwa system, sikuchukua hiyo loan. So registry itaandikia email hawa watu wenye wamesema wamekupatia loan na watawaambia waitoe. Wasipoitoa itabidi kuna procedure watachukua ku make sure imetoka. So as a borrower, hiyo ndio kitu ya maana unafaa kujua. Venye unaweza jisearch kwa system. So hiyo ni number one, kama unaweza search na jina yako, ID namba yako. So the other way unaweza search ni unakuja hapa kwa collateral registry, una type hapo search request na unaweza search na chassis namba ya gari. So kama unajua chassis namba ya gari yako, unaweka hapo hiyo chassis number wanga the long 16 digit code, wanga imeandikwa kila mahali, unaweka hapo hiyo digit. Sasa zenye collateral notice inawekwa na mtu aseme ametumia gari, lazima uweke chassis number. So the reason unaweka chassis number ni sasa zenye pia wewe unakuja kusearch, ukitumia hiyo chassis number itakwambia hii chassis number imetumiwa kwa gari gani. For instance, I think nimetumia chassis number mara kadhaa. Hiyo sio chassis number, hiyo ni number tu nimeandika. Sasa niwaoneshe result yenye tunaweza pata. Download. So hii nimetumia
Sorry, Larry, we are not seeing your screen. Sorry.
Sorry, just notice that moment. There. Beautiful. Okay, so chenye nimefanya hapo ni nimeenda kwa okay, just a second. So yeah. Pole. So chenye nimefanya hapo nimekuja kwa stop sharing hapa, share this instead hapo. So nimekuja kwa notice collateral registry, nikaenda kwa search request. Kwa search request nikasema nataka kusearch kuona kama gari yangu imetumiwa mahali popote. So kwa gari yangu nakuja naweka hapo chassis number ya gari. So nimetumia nitumie chassis number, najua napata output. Lucy, just give me a minute. I'm calling you back. I'm calling you back. Right? I think your chassis number imetumiwa mahali. So unakuja unaweka chassis number. Hiyo ndio chassis number. Una click search. I hereby confirm, finish. Then unaenda unalipa. So hii itakuonesha hii chassis number imetumiwa wapi kwa system. So unalipa. So kulipa, instructions za kulipa ndio hiyo, go to M-Pesa kama uko na M-Pesa ama whichever unataka kutumia. Once umelipa, output itakuonesha hapo. So una download hiyo output. Download. Share this instead. So hii itakuonesha hii chassis number yenye imetumiwa wapi. So hii ni chassis number yenye imetumiwa, inakuonesha vizuri hii chassis number imetumiwa wapi, na hii chassis number imetumiwa mara moja. So kama uko sawa na hiyo notice, wewe hiyo pesa wewe ndio ulichukua na notice ni ya hiyo bank, hiyo ni sawa. So hivyo ndio unaweza search kuona kama notice imewekwa kwa jina yako ama imewekwa kwa property yako. Sawa sawa. So hapo ndio mimi namalizia. Rebecca, back to you.
Yes.
Hello?
Larry, are you back?
Yes, I am back.
Yes, Rebecca,
so
I want to ask.
So maybe let Larry finish.
Larry,
and then we can. Maybe
Rebecca,
let him.
I am done. I am done, and I have handed the session back to you.
Can I continue?
Oh, you have. It appears I'm the one who disappeared. Okay. Yes. So it's asked the question. Soita?
It just a small question on presentation by Larry.
Yeah.
Meaning, this will be done virtually at the cyber cafes, yes. But now it appears the system security is a challenge. It can be a challenge to this kind of registration. I'm thinking of a situation like, you remember last year the President commissioned a task force on blockchain technology, which was supposed to provide that a very high level security to systems like yours, because it uses peer-to-peer support. So how sure are you that the system you are using is going to be very secure for the users? That is the first question. The second question is whether what you are doing is connected to CRB. CRB can easily get information from you direct. Thirdly, I want to raise a concern where many people have been listed on CRB for the loans they have not taken. And you have explained, somebody can use your property, maybe, and then you are listed on CRB. I don't know whether I'm clear. Please, can you clarify?
Larry, maybe you can answer the first two questions. And then I'm hoping Dr. NJARAMBA will take the third one about being listed on CRB wrongly.
Okay, I think I had from that point where Mr. Soita was talking about can CRB get information from us directly? I think that's the point at which it started. So maybe you can come back again.
Your first question, Mr. Soita. I think he asked about the security of the system. He was concerned that
yes, it's very right that the CRB get information.
He was talking, I don't know, about people going to do these registrations from cyber cafes and how secure that is. And then his second question was about whether the system is connected to CRB and whether they can obtain information directly from this registry. I hope I've gotten that right, Mr. Soita.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Larry?
Okay, so
yes.
Let me answer the second question first. So no, the system is not connected directly to CRB. I don't think that is how the system was meant to work. But if CRB is looking for any information which they do not ever bother with, they will need to do a search request like any other person and make a payment, because I guess that is public information. But I think Rebecca can add on to that. That's the first one. For the second one, the security of the system, I would look at it in two ways. There's the security of the individual making the application, and there's the security of the system. So let me work on both of them. So the first one is, if I put details of Larry, and Larry did take a loan, basically I have Larry's ID. Yes, you can be able to make that particular application online, but the application is always pegged on somebody's account. It says that somebody made this application. Basically, you leave a breadcrumb showing that you made this application saying that Larry has a loan of this amount of money. The day Larry will do his application and find that is false information, I believe there's a way that any false information that is put up on the system, there's a legal way that can be answered, that can be taken care of. That's the first one. Then the second one, if okay, that was one. Now, the security of the system. The system is secure. I think there's a whole team of security team that make sure that the information that is within the system is secure. So I do not think there would be any problem with the security, anybody doing anything malicious or fishy within the server.
Thank you, Larry. Dr. NJARAMBA, want to clarify on the issue of CRB?
Yes, I can do that.
For instance,
we didn't hear that question.
Mr. Soita, come again. Soita, there's a question you just asked now. Please come again.
Now, as
yes, I think part of the
yes, Mr.
you have answered, but it's still Larry was explaining or using the example of a chassis number, which can the system is secure.
No, Rebecca, let me deal with these two issues, this one and the one of CRB.
Okay.
Because you see, as indicated earlier, this system is hosted on e-Citizen. And therefore, whatever mechanisms that have been placed on the security of the system is basically the same across the system. So I'm not saying that because it is on e-Citizen, it is perfect. But of course, cybersecurity is still an issue that goes on and on, that we can never be sure that we are 100% secure. But so far, so good. We haven't had any problems with the system. No hacking has happened on the system, and so on. And therefore, so far, so good. But on ICT issues, it is continuous improvement. Nothing is ever perfect. Now, on the question as to whether it is connected to CRB, it isn't. And for the simple reason that the two are very different systems. Now, this system is there for you to register security. CRB is an issue of registration of persons who have defaulted on loans. And therefore, the two are totally different systems that really are not supposed to be linked because, again, on CRB, they are the specific financial institutions that are authorized to list people there. But in this one, we are saying we are just registering security. It's basically like the RAD's office, where you register a charge of a piece of land at the RAD's office, and you do not need to link that to CRB. So the two are totally different. They are not linked. They are not supposed to be. Rebecca, you can proceed now.
Thank you, Dr. NJARAMBA. I think let's go to Tom to finalize his presentation. We are behind schedule. Let's see if we can finish soon. Tom?
Thank you.
Rebecca, I got you clear. I just had one slide remaining. Sorry, members, for that. I had a power issue at my place. Let me just call it out. Oh, Rebecca, you have the presentation on your side. You can open it up so that we save time. Now let me try from this side. Okay, it's there. Let me share. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Tom, we can see.
Yeah, so sorry for that. I think I was on this slide where we are talking about what banks look for in a business plan, and just the components of a business plan from, of course, very basic perspective, but of course, key fundamental things that we really need to ensure that we have in a business plan. We talked about executive summary that, of course, summarizes everything. Remember, this is what they may want to read just to summarize everything and make an important decision. Then company and business description, we talked about the company size in terms of also directors. And I mentioned that that point number 2, remember the point there that some directors may have a good track record with financials. So it's important that your people, the kind of people that you bring on board as directors also have good character and is connected to the first C of lending. Then we talked about products. That is important that you just give highlight of your products, and also there will be interest in terms of understanding whether as an enterprise you're able to utilize the opportunities that are there, whether you're able to manage your risk, whether you understand your SWOT analysis in terms of certain things that you might want to do to get to enhance your revenue stream and all that. Then we are talking about market analysis in the business plan. Just give some highlight about the size of the market. And of course, this also has an indication in terms of the long-term profitability of the business, whether as a business you'll be able to repay the loan and create income. So institutions, in terms of financial institutions, they're interested in this, just understanding, do you understand your market? Have you analyzed it? Do you understand your competitors and all that? and just to understand that there's long-term profitability for the institution or the enterprise to pay back the loan. Then talk about your sales and marketing strategy, just to ensure that you maintain that profitability focus in terms of knowing what are you doing today as a game plan, right? Just to ensure that there's some business and revenue coming in. And then we talked about staffing and management, capacity of the staff to run business, which I mentioned that in our experience dealing with SMEs, one of those challenges they have is succession planning. So it gets to a point where the business grows and you want to include outsiders who are not members of the family to bring in some objectivity and competence in terms of running the business. So it will be very important that they get to understand. So if you have somebody handling HR, is this person having some basic qualification in terms of what HR issues are? Same applies to other functions and even accounting. Because you can't just put anybody to run your accounts. Of course, as a business, before you grow to that level, there are certain services that you may want to outsource, but also it's just important that as you do all this, you have some due consideration in terms of the qualifications of these parties that are outsourced or the kind of staff that you're having to manage your business. Then number 7 is you need to talk about your financial plan and projections. Remember, you need to give a projection of your long-term revenue stream in terms of profitability. Just know a kind of a view of your balance sheet in terms of how it's going to look like. What are you projecting to generate to actually assure the institution of your financial capability and sustainability. Now, depending on the size of the business, there's the aspect of research and development, where there could be interest in terms of understanding how are you, incorporating the aspects of creativity and innovation, because the products you have today might be obsolete at some point. So if you look at the product life cycle, what are you intending to do once that product gets to a decline stage? So that if you're talking about a facility that might be 5 years, and yet the product life cycle that you have could be 2 years, then there's a problem. So there's a need to see a possible rebirth of some of these products and services to ensure that there will be sustainability of the offer over a long period of time, particularly during that time when you'll be servicing the loan. Then we talk about sales pipeline. Just give indication of the capacity of the business to maintain cash flow, revenue stream. Because if you have a dry pipeline, then it's a problem. So do you have some sales prospects? Do you have, do you do some sales forecasting and all that? So that somebody can be able to say in the next 6 months, this is what I intend to sell to be able to generate some funding. And of course, the funding requirements, remember we said, you cannot be a business worth 50 or 100,000, and then you want a loan worth 10 million. You must have very convincing facts. Remember, it's about facts and figures to be able to convince financial institutions to why you want a bigger figure. So it's important just to understand what are your funding requirements, so that you are not talking about looking for money just to upgrade your car because you're going to a financial institution, and so that you have this upgrade as part of your financial need if this is not really going to support the business. Then lastly, of course, you can give supporting documents why this is important, as to explain why your business can be trusted to repay. So those are just very critical components of a business plan, that as you develop a business plan, whether you engage somebody to do it, and of course, as a business owner, you also just ensure that these are key things that are necessary. And banks are quite keen in some of these things as part of supporting your funding request over and above the collateral that we are talking about. Remember, we are talking about, yes, collateral, very, very important, but remember there are also other aspects that just ensures the sustainability of the business. Then this is my last slide. Remember some of the things that, how do banks tell you are a good business? Yes, you have your property registered there, BRS, you have your business plan, you have your books of accounts, you are doing record keeping and all. The question is, are there other things? Remember, when they're doing due diligence, and remember, these are things in terms of our interactions with the financial institutions, when we've been training the SMEs, there are certain things that they may not tell you as obvious. But the first point is, as an entrepreneur, are you passionate about the business? Okay. Remember, when you are passionate about what you're doing, it means there's some high level of commitment. So they want to understand whether you have passion for what you're doing, or you're just doing this for the sake of generating income, just for survival. Because when something is anchored on your passion, then it's very clear that there's high level of sustainability, and you're able to go out of your way to ensure that you actually answer to your passion and the business succeeds. They also want to understand whether you want to grow the business or just want to maintain the status quo. Now, very, very important, because you must have that growth orientation. Are you really triggered by that growth interest? All right. Then consistency, and of course, the fact that you know the plan, very, very important. And that's why I said, even if you got a kind of a consultant doing this for you, please own the plan, understand it, because they'll not be asking the consultant, they'll be asking you as an entrepreneur. So just ensure that you know the plan, and you are also consistent, in terms of some of the commitments that you said that if you have to do this first quarter, have you done that in the past quarter? What have you done, so that you can be able to demonstrate that there's some commitment and there's consistency in terms of the activities and what is actually penned down in the plan. Record keeping, very, very important. Can you account for cash? Or we just say the cash that comes in, you have no idea what comes in, what goes out? Or when we get a windfall in terms of business, if we are actually driving a small car, we want to upgrade to a bigger car, do we really differentiate what is in for business, what is in that is paying me as an entrepreneur? Because you must pay yourself first. So record keeping is very, very important, because it will be very clear to the financial institution that yes, you are accountable to your activities and all that. Then you must be present. Is the entrepreneur present? Are the staff friendly? You can imagine, like, running a restaurant and you find waiters not very friendly. Definitely, you realize that sustainability of the business, as far as customer centricity is concerned, is in limbo. So it's very important that even when you're running a business, and that is why you find a financial institution, if you had somebody who is present, going to that business and is there full-time, and you have somebody who is operating, is still working full-time, but as people running the business and just getting report at the end of the day. As a banker or as a lender, I'll be giving first priority to the entrepreneur who is present in that business, because that person started the business to answer the passion and all that. Now, it's very important that even as you delegate, there's the aspect of being present, there's leadership presence, and you can be able to pick some of the challenges that could be coming along. And friendliness of employees, very, very important. When these institutions do due diligence and come to your premises, some of those things could also contribute to the kind of score when they now take this to further analysis, credit analysis in their own office. That's what Mr. Sweater was talking about. Those things they do in back office that you may not really understand, and then you are told that we are not giving you a loan, or of course, or maybe we are giving you whatever the case. Now, it's also important that you keep up with emerging trends affecting business and customers, especially this time now that we are dealing with COVID-19. Now, if you can be able to leverage on technology to be able to offer your services and products, that would be better. Because when you're talking of post-COVID, the new normal could be something we are not aware of. The question is, are you aware of the emerging trends? Are you keeping tab on industry in terms of the industry analysis, what competitors are doing, so that you can be able to enhance your competitive advantage and all that? Last but not least is not to be worried about Caesar, because this is quite key. The Bible says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. So if you are not compliant in terms of taxes, you are a kind of a business that, fears can just see them, you are taking, you are taking your leave or whatever, then that's a concern for any lender. So these are just some of the things that in terms of registration, just ensure that you're legally constituted and everything is right, you are paying your taxes. Then in that way, the lender will be assured that you will not be closing business because you fear the authorities and they can come after you for anything else and all that. So those are just some of the things that That is important that as we look at also the legal aspects, we also need to look at also the managerial issues that are quite fundamental to success of your enterprises. And as I said, for more details, those are my contacts. You are free to get in touch. Should you need any capacity building, solutions, SME related in other areas, as we work together with Dr. NJARAMBA and team, those are contacts. We also have Anna McCovey, who is also who has also joined us. She's here with us. She's the one running the SME solutions at KM. So you are free, please, to get in touch, and we'll be able to support you on this exciting journey as you make your businesses grow. Back to you, Rebecca, for any question if there is.
Thank you, Mr. Oguru. That was very informative and insightful. It's unfortunate that we have lost most of our participants. I think we took too long or they had issues, but thank you for that presentation. I don't know if we have any questions. We have come to the end of our training today. So anybody who has something before we close?
A point. Yes, you have a point around.
Yes, Mr. Osher.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, just in contribution to Mr. Onguru's presentation, that SMEs that do not survive beyond the third birthday, as he said, actually become MSEs, because what actually drives them forward is the customer, is the passion for the business, so that even in the face of hard economic times, they still continue, going on, even if they become bankrupt, but they still come. So our responsibility as a the MSE Federation is actually around associates that these are actually collateral in MSE businesses. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank him for that very excellent presentation for the MSEs, and to request that in the future the KIM, the Kenya Institute of Management, can kindly work closely with the MSE Federation towards the training and the education and the change of the mindset that MSEs have on business around the country, so that in all our 47 county management committees, we can actually have something that can help the MSEs to bounce back after the corona, to be able to be profitable businesses and to bring in shareholder value. Thank you very much, Mr. Onguru.
Thank you, sir. We will pursue that. I think if you don't mind, because we are only seeing the name Proudly Kenyan, we can exchange contacts and we'll be able to pick that up offline. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do that. I've picked yours from the screen.
Thank you.
Asante.
Thank you all. Dr. Jaramba, maybe now you can close for us. Just a reminder before Dr. Jaramba comes on, we have sent the evaluation forms. Please take a minute to fill them and send them back to us. It will be important for us to see if we have made any impact today. Please do send the forms back to us. We'll appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Jaramba.
Yeah, mine is just to thank everyone for being present today, and say that we will work together, even moving into the future. So thank you very much, and have a nice afternoon and a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Everyone, the training has ended and we have taken an hour more than we thought we would, but we thank you, the few that stayed to the very end. We hope to see you another time. You can log off now.
Hello, Frida. How are you? Nice to have you here. Very fine, Secretary General.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
A bunch of information. I'm so enlightened.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've seen the indomitable Rebecca Wanyama.
Imagine.
Thank you.
Actually rely on her.
Okay.
Now, Frida,
thank you.
Now, Rebecca, that is the Secretary General of the Micro and Small Enterprises Federation.
Good to meet you, Frida. You have been here throughout, but you have not said anything. I'm glad you finally said something.
Well, I was taking notes very keenly. Whatever I wanted to ask was something that is it who mentioned about the collateral?
Yes.
About the financials, and I think I got the answer quite well. So everything else was landing well.
That's okay. That's okay. Good thing is that now you know how to reach me in case you have anything in future you need to look for us. You know where to find me.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sure. This was good. I'm happy you stayed all through.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, so you have a good afternoon and enjoy your weekend.
You too, thank you.
Frida, do you need help leaving the meeting? You have muted your microphone.
I'm trying to leave. I'm not able
to. I can remove you. Let me do that just right now.
Please.